Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this regular meeting of Fernie City Council held on June 10th, 2025. Kisuk Yukit, we acknowledge the city of Fernie is located within Kukinamakis, the unceded territory of Yakutat Nucleate First Nation. We recognize that we live and work within their vast lands. Akanahunik are from Yakutat Nucleate and are members of the Ktunaxa-speaking peoples of British Columbia, Idaho, and Montana. That is so cute. So last week, June 4th, was National Green Building Day, an opportunity to recognize the builders across Canada doing great work in sustainable building. And the city would like to take this opportunity to give a shout out to our local builders who are doing great work in sustainable building. And I'd also like to give a bit of a shout out to the Community Energy Association for their retrofit assist program, which while not new build, actually helps those of us who have older dwellings. And a couple of other things, I'd like to congratulate Line Creek's mine rescue team, who won the provincial mine rescue competition in Squamish over the last weekend. That's no mean feat, having competed at that level once. And yeah, it's a pretty difficult thing to accomplish, so good on them. And I'd also like to congratulate Rosemary Bryden, who is the RDK Area A Volunteer of the Year and a great contributor to our communities. I'll now call the meeting to order at 6:33 p.m. and ask for a mover and a seconder for the following recommendation: that the agenda of the June 10th, 2025 regular meeting be adopted. Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Shoesmith. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. I'll now open the floor to public participation and invite the public in attendance or participating electronically who wish to comment on items listed on the meeting agenda in accordance with section 3.7.3 of the procedure bylaw to address council, except speakers must not address council regarding for which a public hearing must be held or has been held pursuant to the Local Government Act prior to council's consideration of the matter or adoption of the bylaw. Speakers must not address council regarding a permit for which public notice must be given or has been given pursuant to the Local Government Act prior to council's consideration of issuance of the permit, and a speaker may only address council for a maximum of 3 minutes. And I'll turn to our corporate officer because we do have a list, I understand.
First up, we have Pierre Dupont.
Good evening, Mr. Dupont. You have 3 minutes.
And I'll try to stick to my time limit this time. I want to speak to agenda item 7, the items arising from the Committee of the Whole. So back on March 18th, I made a presentation to the Committee of the Whole on pet licensing on behalf of the Fernie Pet Society. We made several suggestions at that time in ways to improve the pet licensing. And one of those suggestions was to partner with a company called DocuPets. So DocuPets, as you may recall, works with hundreds of communities across Canada and the US to provide licensing services to municipalities. And in BC, the cities of Cranbrook, Nelson, Vernon, Fort St. John have already been using this service for a few years. Since I spoke to you, the cities of Richmond and Armstrong have started using the service as well. So at that Committee of the Whole meeting, there was a motion approved that asks city staff to meet with the Pet Society and report back to council. So far, we haven't had any meetings with staff, and I know that they haven't been speaking to the DocuPets company either. So I just want to remind you that there is, if we want to have licensing services in place by the new year, we have to have an agreement in place within the next few months. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Dupont. And just for clarity, just items arising from the Committee of the Whole was specific to this Committee of the Whole, when we go into Committee of the Whole this meeting. However, just a point of clarity, but I do appreciate your presentation, and we will follow up with staff on your behalf.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Next up, Your Worship, is Wendy McDougall.
Ms. McDougall, welcome. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Oh, I could use a few extra seconds. Okay, good evening. Thank you for having me. My name is Wendy McDougall. I'm the Executive Director at the Fernie Chamber of Commerce at 102 Commerce Road. I'm here today to provide some feedback on the RDS strategy presentation that you'll see later today. I've reviewed the draft presentation with the Chamber Board, and while we're generally supportive of the proposed infrastructure projects, we want to raise some concerns regarding the proposed year-round closure associated with Station Square enhancement project. Since then, I've also been contacted by a few downtown business owners, the Waldorf Building, Strata, and the Royal Canadian Legion, who have expressed similar concerns. So there's 4 major concerns, and I just have to put one more plug in there that had we started this process sooner, these probably would have come to light through communication at the board level, and we could have discussed it at the RDS committee meeting. So the 4 major concerns are broader consultation is essential. So this is a significant change to downtown, and it deserves input from the broader business community. We've seen that so far. The Chamber is ready to support this initiative. As you are aware, we are starting a downtown business working group. We've recently received grant funding for that just this week, so we're very excited about that. And this is the type of engagement that we'd like to bring to that group, and then bring a collective response from the business community back to the mayor and council. After seeing the council package published, I do appreciate that it did say that there would be a communication engagement plan specific to this project should it be advanced. The second item of concern is year-round activation is not realistic. So in communities of our size, pedestrian-only zones struggle outside of peak seasons. So without consistent programming, these spaces can be underutilized and often problematic. Pedestrian spaces often attract loitering and transient activity when foot traffic is low, and we've seen this in Revelstoke and Nelson. Third is access to parking. And so removing downtown parking without a clear replacement strategy will add pressure, especially with other developments planned for the area. And that could negatively impact some of our businesses, particularly in colder months when pedestrian activity declines and vehicle access becomes more essential. Fourth is flexibility, not permanency. So seasonal or event closures already work well in Fernie. So for Grizz Days and the Wednesday socials and throughout the summer, a permanent closure could remove that flexibility and could lock us into a configuration that may not serve the community year round. So the Chamber Board is supportive of projects that enhance the visitor experience and contribute to the revitalization of downtown and Station Square. However, before advancing this project, we believe it's essential to engage the downtown business community, carefully assess the need for vehicle access, evaluate the potential impacts of parking loss. And rather than pursue a permanent closure, we recommend maintaining flexibility and keeping options open to ensure the long-term success of the space, drawing on lessons learned from other communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McDougall.
Next, we have Melanie Rigglesworth.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Melanie Rigglesworth. I'm the Executive Director of the Fernie Trails Alliance. The FDA was very excited to be part of the RDS strategy alongside the main stakeholders and partners in Fernie, and especially having representation from the Tanaha. It was very rewarding to be part of the process. Brett did an excellent job of facilitating the meetings with the short time frame that he was under. In the future, it would be great to have these meetings before the RDS strategy deadline and to meet on an annual basis to discuss where we are all doing things well or where things are not going well. The FDA is happy to see that the RDS strategy is now reflecting the amount of remediation and impact management that the work that we do and perform on the trails, and that is part of the strategy for 2025 through to 2027. The FDA wanted to make clear that this funding is not replacing what the FDA had already requested in the Committee of the Whole meeting back in April. I'm hoping that Council has directed staff to propose our requested funding of $55,000 a year from the City of Fernie come to fruition as other mountain towns in BC have done. The FDA has discussed already
has discussed already our use of data-driven planning with our trails decision matrix, as well as our continued sustainability and integration with signage and staging hubs that will support the RDS strategy by working with the City of Fernie, the Chamber and Tourism Fernie for a cohesive plan. The FTA is looking forward to being the lead organization related to trails and will work alongside the Coker Carriage Society and the City of Fernie to have projects described in the RDS strategy come to life. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wigglesworth.
Next, we have Meredith Daniel.
Hi, Council. Sorry for that outburst at the start. We're a little bit mommy focused right now. We can't leave her ever. I am just here to quickly give my support to both the Wild Wapiti presentation as well as to the Fernie Childcare Society's request for further space at Max Turek. I'm not going to belabor the point of how dire the childcare situation is in Fernie, as well as many other communities. Council is well aware. I just wanted to come to say that over the years, Council has received many requests from the communities due to different problems, whether it be affordable housing, childcare, food costs, myriad of issues in our community. And oftentimes, Council is not able to provide the amount of support they would like just due to the restrictions of our municipal mandate. However, tonight, I do believe you are being asked to support in ways that we can to hopefully create further spots for childcare within Fernie. And we will be leaving, so as not to interrupt you, but we'll be watching the proceedings from home. So I look forward to your conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Daniel.
Next, we have Yika Gyoki.
Good evening, Your Worship and councillors. Thank you for providing the public participation period opportunity. I'm here to comment on agenda item 11.2. My name is Yika Gayarki and I'm the Executive Officer of Tourism Fernie, based out of 102 Commerce Road. Tourism Fernie would like to publicly endorse the 2025-2027 RDS strategy, except for a few key comments and feedbacks. Though the agenda package speaks of the intense collaborative process, it is important to speak to key issues and changes that need to be implemented to ensure an even better collaborative process. The process to develop the 3-year RDS needs to start at least 6 months in advance of the initial draft deadline of April 30th. The first meeting was on April 7th. Stakeholders cannot turn on a dime and meet for many hours and days within a 3-week period to develop a strategy. It took a lot of time away from many other priorities, creating stress along the way and a challenge to contribute effectively. The rushed process did not allow for enough time for respective boards to review and provide timely feedback in the process. I'm fully aware that the ministry took a long time to send the updated RDS strategy guidelines to the municipalities, but this does happen every 3 years and the guidelines never undergo any significant changes. It behooves us not to wait for the province next time and to start the development process 6 months in advance. The community and the tourism economy will be the better for it. The RDS advisory group, or even a smaller stakeholder group, needs to meet more than annually to ensure effective check-ins on progress and support any roadblocks along the way. So we would suggest quarterly. The RDS advisory group should also meet again finally, or after the final RDS is approved, to support next steps on the project areas, which are currently only high level in form. Since the draft RDS recently became available, I was able to bring it to the board recently during a board meeting. The board voted against the year-round closure of Station Square. Tourism Fernie does, however, support further investment in Station Square and other gathering hubs to enhance the space for tourism events and animation. As such, we would support another review of this project area and budget and further engagement. Lastly, I do want to recognize Director Logan for the effort he put into this RDS, given the limited information, knowledge, and timing he started with. The RDS advisory group is a solid group of stakeholders willing to continue their work in this process, and I look forward to further engaging. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gayarki.
Next, we have Chris Inglis.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff and gallery. I'm here today on, I would say, it would fall under number 10 bylaws. Mayor, I talked to you the last 2 summers about the CP rail right away and the grass, which is a growing concern for me, especially after the town, I believe it was Lytton, mostly burnt down because of the railway going through and doing their grinding.
Sorry,
CP
sorry, Mr. Inglis, what are you speaking to on our agenda?
I believe it would fall under your bylaws for where you're cutting the grasses along the right of way.
Yeah, but we don't have anything referencing bylaws in the current agenda.
No, I just see the heading bylaws, so I figured I could speak to it under bylaws.
Okay, I'll allow it. Go ahead.
Thank you. So Mayor, I did bring it up to you the last 2 summers, and as you clearly can see by the 3-foot grass from 10th Street to 14th Street, nothing's been taken serious. Does everybody on council remember the town that burnt down from the grinding of the CP rail? It just went through here last week again. And one note, Mayor, I did bring to your attention that the city of Fernie was cutting the right of way across from the pool on both Cokato Road and First Avenue. And you looked into it, responded to me, no, our city employees are not doing that. So I got one even better for you that you can say no to. The video and the pictures that I took last night with city workers, city trucks, city equipment cutting that grass on the right of way. So if it can be done by the pool where the grass is maybe 6 inches long, why can't it be done between 10th Street and 15th Street on the CP rail right of way where it could cause a fire? I don't see why one end of the town is different from the other. And can you please elaborate on how you told me it was never done by the city? And I can send you the video and the pictures from last night if you want to see it. Thank you.
I'm not here to discuss it with you, Mr. Inglis, but thank you for your.
Okay, when can I get a response? Do you need any other further information? Would you like me to send the video and pictures to council? Will I get a response that way?
Yeah, feel free.
Thank you.
Next, we have Christiana Eves online.
Hopefully everyone can hear me. If not, let me know. I'm going to speak on agenda item 14.1, I believe it is, on behalf of the Fernie Child Care Society. I'm just going to read from my notes here. I stand before you today as a parent of 3 wonderful children who have greatly benefited from the services provided by the Fernie Child Care Society. Our experience has not only enriched our lives, but has also highlighted the urgent need for expanded childcare options in our community. As outlined in the letter from our daycare manager, Shelby, the Fernie Child Care Society is requesting the extension of its programming within the Max Chair Community Center. The expansion, which seeks to include room 121, would provide an additional 868 square feet to the existing space, allowing for 16 more childcare spots. This is not just a number. It represents 16 families who could have access to affordable, quality childcare, reducing the burden on parents and contributing to a more vibrant community. Currently, many families in Fernie are faced with the daunting reality of having to make sacrifices, often requiring one parent to stay home due to the lack of available childcare. By approving this expansion, you would be taking a significant step toward elevating this pressure. Furthermore, this request is to expand our outdoor play space. Currently, we have 1 playground between 2 classrooms of 32 children, which limits their opportunities for outdoor engagement. An additional fenced playground would provide a safe, expansive area for our children to play and develop and fostering their growth and well-being. The Fernie Child Care Society has been a cornerstone of our community since 2027, offering a $10 a day childcare program that is inexclusive and accessible. Our dedicated team of 15 educators works tirelessly to provide quality childcare to families with children aged 10 months to 5 years old. As we strive to enhance the lives of these children and their families, we recognize that expanding our services aligns perfectly with the City of Fernie's Council strategic plan for a livable community. In conclusion, I really urge you to consider the profound impact that this expansion would have on our families and the entire Fernie community. By supporting the Fernie Child Care Society's request, you will not only contribute to the well-being of our children, but also decrease the wait list of nearly 200 children in need of care. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Eves. And we will discuss that when we get to correspondence. Thank you. With that, is there anyone in the room who didn't get the opportunity to speak? Get their name on the list? Please, yeah.
Hi, my name is Louise Ferguson, Fernie District Arts Council, 601 First Avenue. Apologies for my lateness. There was a train, Ridgemont problems. I just want to speak to the RDS strategy and say we are in support of the strategy. It was great to have a cross section of different sectors, and it was a really positive and supportive meetings where everyone was looking out for the best interests of the community and how tourism can be impacted by the strategy. It's great to have for the events and animation, those core events, so that there is funding each year. And I think it really will benefit the tourism experience and the visitor experience, but also the chance for other events to submit for some new projects or new ideas to, again, add more animation for the tourists. Murals are also a great way for the shoulder season. They're low capacity. There is the self-guided art walk that tourists can do, and it's a different type of tourist than our adventure tourist. So it's great to be able to have some animation infrastructure in there to be able to add to those experiences. In addition, like any enhancements to the downtown core have always been a great way to enhance that visitor experience. So any more improvements in the downtown core, in Station Square, I think will be very well received and really support things that happen. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Ferguson.
I won't be staying for the presentation, unfortunately, but I will watch it tomorrow and look forward to your comments.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else who would like to speak? Okay, that was going to be my next question. And someone else online, Ms. Rhodes? Okay, thank you.
Hi. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Shelby Dominic, and I'm the manager at Fernie Child Care Society. I'm here on behalf of our board of directors, so thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. Also, thank you to Christiana and Meredith as well for being advocates for childcare that's such dire need for our community. So in the agenda package, you'll see a letter from Fernie Child Care Society, and we're here to request your support in expanding our programming at the Max Turk Community Center by adding room number 121 to our lease. By adding this additional 868 square feet would allow us to create up to 20 new childcare spaces or up to 12 new infant toddler spaces. This would help to address Fernie's critical childcare shortage. In order to continue to provide a quality childcare program, we'd also need permission from council to install an additional toilet and sink at our cost. So our request aligns directly with the city's strategic plan priority of creating a livable community, specifically leveraging existing city-owned facilities to create additional childcare spaces. Expanding licensed childcare supports working families, building community resilience, and addresses a key locals need. We currently have almost 200 children on our wait list, so this expansion would make a real difference. We're also interested in expanding our outdoor play space to support this growth. Specifically, we'd like to explore using the area opposite the pickleball courts for an additional fenced playground. It's already fenced on 3 sides, so we would only need to build 1 fence to create that additional play space. Which is essential to early development. So right now we are currently using that space. We just would like to make it more safe for the children since Last year, there was a moose that wandered through that field, and we had to rush the children into the playground. So it'd be nice to have some more safety there. So Fernie Child Care Society is the first $10 a day childcare center in the Elk Valley. We've been operating as a nonprofit society since 2007. We employ 15 trained educators and certified and provide inclusive care for children from 10 months to 5 years old. Our mission is to enhance the lives of children, families, and our community, and this expansion supports that mission. We're also proud to be a reliable partner with the City of Fernie, including discussions on future co-use of the fire hall facility. So thank you for your time and consideration this evening. We look forward to continuing our work with the city to expand access to high quality, affordable childcare in Fernie. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dominic. That moose story is very compelling. That's a first. Ms. Rhodes, anyone else? Of course, yeah, please.
Thank you. Bit of a spontaneous get up, but my name is Laura Eady. I'm a parent of 2 boys at Wild Wapiti Play School. I just wanted to voice my support for the request from the play school to build a play space on city land out there. We have been utilizing the garden through the Catholic Church for the past 2 years since opening. The play school, when it started, utilized the kind of best possible option in town that we could find for a childcare facility. However, there was no outdoor space, and the play school board and educators have worked so hard to collaborate with the Catholic Church and build an incredible play space that's open to the public to support not only our families, but many other programs and other children within the community. It is no longer an option, and I just wanted to say what an incredible space it has been to see my boys play, to see the programming that goes on in that space, and to see all the parents working with the educators to build such an incredible space. So just want to say how beneficial it was. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Eady. Anyone else? Going once? No, I'm kidding. And no one else online? Ms. Rhodes? Okay, thank you. And thank you, everybody, for your input. Very much appreciated. I'll now ask for a mover and a seconder that council enter into committee of the whole. Moved by Councillor McIsaac, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. And with that, we will invite our delegation from the Wild Wapiti Play School.
Thank you so much for having us. For accommodating this special committee of the whole for us to be allowed to present. My name is Ali Ferguson, and I'm the chair of the board for Wild Wapiti Play School Society. And this is Marcelle Poulin, and she is also on the board. We have 8 board members that support the organization. So I'll let Marcelle take it away, and yeah, our overall request is to utilize the courthouse grounds preferably, and with the option of any other close by space, one of which could be City Hall grounds as a public play area that Wild Wapiti Play School would utilize.
Okay, hello. So we're from Wild Wapiti. We're a nonprofit childcare center just across the street in the Fernie Family Center, and we've been operational for 2 years now, next week actually. And we have worked really hard to address obviously the critical childcare shortage that you are all well aware of in Fernie. Our focus was on creating affordable childcare, and just this month is our first month as a $10 a day center, which we're really excited about. So greatly reducing the costs for our families. We focused on a child-centered, child-led curriculum, play-based, and of course, a lot of time outdoors. We also have 8 wonderful ECEs as well as some additional qualified support staff. And we're really proud to provide livable wages well above industry minimums, monthly housing allowance, health spending accounts. So this has really led to us retaining pretty much all of our original staff as well as attracting new staff. We currently have 8 children in our infant toddler room and then 20 children in our 3 to 5-year-old classrooms. As Laura mentioned, one of the reasons that we chose the Fernie Family Center was because of the garden behind the building. We saw an opportunity to create a nature-based, safe childcare play space that we and the public would be able to use. So with the permission from the parish and in collaboration with the Fernie Family Garden, we transformed this underutilized space into a really vibrant nature-based play area where our kids have really grown to love and has created, such a safe space for them to kind of get to play. The problem, though, is that this lot is going up for sale. The Catholic Parish Council has decided that the 3 lots, including the Fernie Family Garden, will be going up for sale and that we need to vacate pretty much immediately. As soon as the for sale signs go up, everything needs to be out and we can no longer use the space. So we have been given June 20th, which is next week, as kind of the date we need to have all of our equipment out. This loss of outdoor space threatens a core part of our curriculum. Of course, our classrooms and educators take advantage of getting out into the community and all the amazing spaces, but having that fenced, safe space where kids can really be free to explore, free to play, has been so valuable and vital.
So we've been racking our brains trying to figure out what a proposed solution to this is, and especially given the really tight timeline, because we were only notified by the parish, I think in the first week of May. So it's been a really quick timeline that we didn't really see coming. And we've invested a lot of time and energy into making the Fernie Family Garden such a great space for us. So in terms of a new outdoor play space that we see as really vital to our programming, especially with the really young kids. The older kids are able to explore around the community a little bit more easily, but we have children down to 12 months old. So having that really close proximity is important. We do see like 2 city-owned properties very close by. So the courthouse grounds, the staff have been bringing the children there on occasion because it is so close and accessible. One great thing about it is that it has a lot of shade. That's been a challenge in our current play space. It's directly across, they would have to cross the street, but it's a fairly quiet street, and I think that's manageable. And it's a publicly owned, underutilized area that's already partially fenced. So by asking to use permission to kind of move our play space to that area, we already have all the existing equipment. All of it is able to move. We even planted like perennial plants, and there was lots of mulch in that area. We see this as, a creative way to keep our program keep going, at least for the short term. We've been thinking about long-term solutions for our play school as well, in the event that the Fernie Family Center is no longer leases to us. We see it as a good use of the space that could, is in line with the the strategy, the City of Fernie strategy to support childcare and have active families that are able to work in the community. And we also see it as developing that public space. So our proposal is not to have like exclusive use for our program, but to have it be a community access space. So the specific plans are to fence off part of the area. We're proposing the northwest corner and relocate all of our outdoor play structures, which include we've tried to put some pictures throughout the presentation to kind of get a sense of what it's like. We really were going for nature-based, so there's really not any plastic. It's all wooden playhouses, stumps, sandboxes. We do have that one little slide right now. There's boulders that we could potentially move in there for climbing on. We have used tires and just like pieces of wood that get moved around and made into many different things, from seesaws to balance beams. And we would like to request a water source. That's been pretty vital to our program, especially in the summer, for plant care. So we do have a garden box that we would like to move into the space. That's, an important part of our program of caring for plants and growing things in our community, as well as just water play. We just actually got a grant from, in partnership with the Elk River Alliance, to put in a water table that's like a water flow table, and Elk River Alliance was planning to come and do some educational sessions with us. And we have been like working with the Fernie Family Garden to maintain the play space. So we would, be open to doing the maintenance of the area, volunteer with our families. And we would propose for it to be open to public outside of program hours. So we typically have used the play area from about, 9:30 to 4:30 p.m. with a large break in there in the middle of the day. So they typically have gone out as our primary area for two times a day. So I have spoken with Michael and Brett, and they mentioned like some two challenges identified with this area. One being the potential conflict of use with defendants coming to use the courthouse, which I, can see that potential conflict there. I'm not totally sure. I put approximately once a month, but I'm not sure how often the provincial court is in session. But the solution that I would propose would just to not utilize the play space on those days. And then it also was identified that it has conservation status. So, and that could, potentially affect the intended aesthetic of the grounds. So our suggested solution to that would be to collaborate and see what we could do to try to, generally conform with the aesthetic. Like we could modify our type of fence that we install, and just emphasizing that it is like using natural materials as much as possible, not necessarily historic, but yeah, it might not be as much as like an eyesore of bright plastic or something of what you're thinking. And also that all the features are temporary, just like we kind of designed it that way when we made the use agreement with the Fernie Family Garden, so that we could use them if necessary, move them if necessary. So we also propose this alternate, option of the City Hall grounds, outlined in the red box there. Could be, these are just approximate sizes, but we thought of that space initially, but some of the pros is that you would avoid that court defendant's conflict of use. It's very close, and it is somewhat underutilized, but less, I'd say, than the courthouse. So the cons would be there is no current fencing, so it would be a larger cost and visual difference having a fence around there. And I see it utilized for more community events and things and other public users. So I'll let Marcel wrap up here.
Yeah, so just as we stated at the beginning, the deadline is coming up really quick. It was short notice, and we're really hoping to find a solution soon. And a quick decision will help secure that continuity for our children, for our families, for our staff, for our center. And yeah, we just so appreciate any support in helping Fernie remain that welcoming, family-centered community space. So yeah, we are open to.
Happy to answer any questions or, yeah, if there's any ideas from the city council on how this could support our placeable.
Well, thank you, Ms. Ferguson and Ms. Pullen. Questions from council? Councillor Shoesmith.
You're currently renting that lot, yeah?
We're actually not renting it, so we don't currently pay a fee. It's just a use agreement that we have signed with the Fernie Family Garden. And the rationale for that was that we were working very closely with the Fernie Family Garden to kind of help them achieve their vision of the space as well, which always included a children's play area. So we were able to access grants to include that. And then with it being a public space, it's not actually licensed as a part of our facility.
Interesting, thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions, comments from council? Councillor Nixon and then Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, great presentation. I'm pro learning through play. My kids did that when we were in Edmonton and Calgary, and not here, but it looks like a great program. And it seems like you've thought of like pretty well, like everything, even the court days. And I guess my question, like that, I love the courthouse and that it's going to get used, that area especially. I guess my only question would be for staff is, would we need to have like a lease agreement, the same as we have with other organizations?
Please.
Thank you, through to council. We would need some sort of land use agreement, whether it was a temporary use agreement or non-exclusive use booking. So when you see the academy or other groups using the courthouse or the city hall grounds, those are formally booked. And there's, obviously some basic insurance for that activity, just so that we aren't taking on the ownership of their use of that public property for their formal programming. So there'd be some of those hoops to work through. And while I don't believe there would be a formal heritage alteration permit, because we wouldn't be, to my understanding, we wouldn't be making permanent alterations to the exterior of the facility or the building. There would be design guidelines that we'd have to look to, and would be, I think, remiss if we didn't follow and engage with the people who are also passionate about heritage and the conservation of that space, because it is one of the most notable heritage buildings in the province.
Mm. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. I kind of think my question was just answered, but something Ms. Ferguson mentioned about the space that they're currently using not being licensed. And my question was, is that something that we would need to seek out in the agreement? Like, does there need to be a specific licensed space for childcare, or can we just use anywhere? But also my further question would be around the land use agreements and everything. So that part has definitely been answered.
Ms. Ferguson,
Could I speak to the licensing a
Yeah,
little bit?
please. Yeah.
So it's been extremely beneficial, actually, the agreement that we have, that it's not a licensed space, even though we do generally follow the licensing guidelines in terms of like maximum height of play structures and things like that. It allows when we're essentially going on a field trip to this location on a daily basis, our insurance still covers that as a field trip, the use of the space. But we're allowed to have all users using it at any time. So even though we suggested like utilizing the space only for wild wapiti during those times, if, we wouldn't be locking the space or anything, people could use it at any time. And if it was our licensed area, I believe it would have to be locked and we could not allow other use. And then the two age groups are allowed to be in there at the same time. Whereas if you have a licensed area, you have to have a separate space for the ITs and a separate space or for the infant toddlers age group and for the preschool age group. So yeah, it's been so great. There's so many siblings in the center, and just that multi-age play has been really amazing opportunity.
Thank you. Councillor Shoesmith.
Thanks, Mayor Milligan. I actually live at the bottom of the hill, so I walk past that all the time. It makes me pretty happy to see all the kids out there. Broadly, I think this is a good idea. I kind of had some thoughts about changing the character of the courthouse, but it seems to me that having a bunch of kids playing is probably an improvement to whatever character there is. The only issue I really am thinking about is we provide property to other schools, and I'm not actually sure what or if we charge them, but I think that we should be aware of that while we're making this decision, just in the interest of fairness and those types of things.
Fair comment. Councillor Ravenous?
Thanks, Your Worship. I'm on the same lines as Councillor Shoesmith on this. This is a public land, best use is to see kids and toddlers using that space well. The question I have for you guys is, what's your long-term plan? Like, if we go ahead with this, is this going to be a forever kind of a plan for you guys?
Yeah, right now we're thinking of it as a kind of approximately 3-year agreement. We have our lease with the Fernie Family Center is up in June of 2028. It's a 5-year agreement, which was required for the funding that we got from the province through the New Spaces Fund. So we're committed to staying in that space, but we are actively looking at other opportunities for a more secure long-term place for the play school. It's been a challenge navigating and just the communication around the long-term rental rates and use of the Fernie Family Center. And we're also not sure whether there's been some concern raised around the financial ability of the parish to continue operating the Fernie Family Center. So we're aware of that, and we're actively looking for other opportunities on school grounds or on city grounds are seen as kind of the most stable long-term places. So yeah, I've already, reached out to the school district in terms of the new school that's being built and the potential for new daycare spaces in there to see if that could be an option. And that's like the best option I have right now, but we'll be continuing to develop a long-term strategy.
Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. That kind of stole the thunder. My question was, what is the long-term strategy, and is this an interim solution or more of a long-term play? And I certainly don't feel comfortable committing for much more than 3 years, those public grounds, without having a more robust understanding of what the implications are going to be. But knowing the importance and value of daycare and childcare and everything in our community right now, I'm fully in support of supporting this as an interim solution, and having staff come back to us with a little bit more fleshing out of those details, what that looks like. As Councillor Shoesmith had mentioned, is this going to conflict with any of our current lease agreements for any of the spaces? Is it equitable with other user groups and how we're allowing use of those public spaces? And just, getting a more robust report on that side of things is where I will be recommending.
Councillor McIsaac.
Thank you, Worship. First and foremost, I think use of public space by children is the highest and best use. That I'm fully supportive of that. Most of my questions have been asked already. I want to raise two potential concerns, and one is there is a long time habit in our community of short-term solutions becoming long-term and difficult to change later. And so if we're going to go path, I would like to ensure that we have be extremely well understood what the time frame is and that it is temporary, if it's going to be temporary and all of that sort of thing, because, well, we've seen this before. So that's a concern that we make sure that it's well understood from the front, and those are details to be worked out, of course. The second one I had, which is much smaller than that, is while I appreciate the value of the fenced area, the one concern I do have about that is while the intent may be that that space continue to be available to everyone in the public, a fully fenced off area by definition says, don't come in here. So I'm sure there are solutions to that, whether it's signage or open gates or whatever the case may be, but it was the one thing that I thought is, while I'm supportive of this idea in general, I wouldn't want it to be set up in such a way that it's still not available to the public at large. It is city property and everyone should have, reasonable access to it. So those are my concerns.
Thank you. Any comments?
Yeah, I'll just add, those are both really valid concerns, and I think some of the suggestions that you made in terms of signage, and, leaving the gates open, as well as the city, kind of advertising or letting people know about this new space, and, Wild Wapiti could support with that as well. And then just in terms of when you are reviewing, like, how other user groups use or rent or city property, I would say just to consider that in this situation, we're not renting it, we're not hoping to rent it exclusively, and that we do want the public at large to be utilizing the area.
Thank you. Councillor Artie Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. I won't add a lot of coats of paint because I think everyone's covered. I just would like to ask you, ladies, first of all, I think what you've done, putting the whole school together, has been amazing. You did it in a really short time, in my opinion. Would you feel that the children would be more secure and safe at the courthouse versus the city, or do you feel comfortable with either spot?
I think the preference would be the courthouse. That it is a less busy road. There's more traffic that goes around. Even just crossing the road to City Hall is more traffic than crossing the road across that way. And then just in terms of the, I guess, cost and challenge of the additional fencing, as well as the shade. While there are trees in that area of the City Hall grounds, it's not very shaded, and the shade tends to go towards the road. Whereas in the courthouse, it's quite shady. So it would be preferable, but we would definitely be still open if that wasn't possible.
Councillor Evans.
You've clearly thought of all the likely questions that is coming your way. Well done.
Anything else from council? Well, from my perspective, thank you for your presentation. I agree. I mean, when I'm in City Hall and the windows are open, there's kids playing on the City Hall grounds. I love it. It's just delightful. So it is an incredibly good use of public space. I also agree that we've, in recent years, found ourselves in circumstances where short-term fixes have become entrenched in the community's mind. That it's very, very difficult to change things. And so to Councillor McIsaac's point, I think a very clear outline of what we're agreeing to would be vital. And we're all supportive. And when the time comes, should the time come, that we're all agreed, we have a plan to move forward. Yeah, I think as a temporary solution, because I am, Ms. Ferguson, you actually said in your presentation, when the family center no longer leases to us. I mean, I know it's a bit speculative, but they're selling that land now. Have there been indications that they may sell the family center?
Nothing official, I would say, but we have been notified by parish members, and I know there's just been a lot of discussion. So, and I'll just clarify one thing, that it's the Diocese of Nelson that actually has ownership over the lots and the building. And so while certain members of the parish have been very supportive and, spent a lot of effort trying to have this vision of this amazing space for the community to use, which I think, has been very well utilized over the many years. There's, a need. They're reassessing the financial sustainability, and we've been told that, and that comes up every year and more as we negotiate our lease. So, I don't know whether it'll be a long-term place for us, but there's lots of benefits of it. It's amazing being right downtown. It's a solid building, having access to all these areas, and being in a building that has similar co-uses, I guess, is really beneficial.
Yeah, and I think again, to my previous comment, as long as we have a clear-eyed view of what the future may hold. And again, it's a speculative question, but would your organization or your co-use organizations be in a position to take possession of that building if it were to come available at some point?
It's something that we've talked about. It would be, a lot of, trying to find different grantors and funders and bringing them all together. The New Spaces Fund is not open currently. So that, is an opportunity where you can have a lot of funding from the province to build new spaces. It does put us in a bit of a challenging position that we already have these spaces. Once the spaces are open, it's a little bit more challenging to find new grants to support that. But I do know there's the Columbia Basin Trust land acquisition grant that can support buildings or property purchases for community interests. So it's an option, I guess.
Fair enough. And I'm asking a lot of speculative questions. I apologize. But have you applied to the land acquisition fund for this piece of land? Or have you inquired?
I've reached out to CBT, but I was kind of initially thinking, that could be a good strategy to try to purchase that land and build a center on it. But with the New Spaces Fund being closed, it's not really an option for us to build a center on it. And then it really is a lot of energy and effort to put into, making this community asset, which I think would be incredible. And the broader community might be interested in preserving green space in the downtown core and, utilizing that property even more. So I would be open to collaborating, I guess, but I don't know that we as a board, this volunteer board, has the energy to bring to fully spearheading that.
Yeah, I fully appreciate that. And if you were to purchase that land and then not have the resources to build a center and you get evicted from the current center, then you've just got a chunk of bare land in the downtown core that potentially becomes a bit of an albatross.
Yeah. I mean, in an ideal world, somehow, we would have access to the building and the property in perpetuity. That would be ideal. It is well set up for childcare in general. And the location is great. And so it would be very sad for the community to lose the building and the land.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask staff, so that it wouldn't be altering the form and character of the building. I appreciate they're toddlers and smaller, but is that fence, would that fence on its own be considered a heritage asset? I don't know that.
Through to council, I think there was some nuance when I spoke to our planning team about wanting to talk about what kind of a fence and are there any permanent alterations that we're making? Is it a temporary heritage fence that's popped up through the summertime? Is it used throughout the winter time as well? And the kind of detail, if it becomes a formal project, that you would flesh out before bringing something back for approval or determining if you really needed any sort of permit for it, like final permit.
Yeah. Councillor Romanes?
Thanks, Your Worship. I'm a little directionally challenged. So if I walk this way, are you asking for the portion that is facing us or the other side?
Yeah, you can look on the slides. I kind of outlined it there, but it's the portion that's facing us, so closer to the Fernie Family Center side and kind of the back corner. Yeah,
So closer to the Catholic Church tucked in the back corner.
yeah.
And you don't, sorry, your presentation, you sort of made a rough polygon, but you're
Mhm.
not really sure of how much room you would require.
Yeah, I mean, the more space, the better. One of the amazing parts of being in the Fernie Family Garden was just how large it was, and it really facilitates that kind of child-led ability to explore and not feel really confined, I guess.
Yeah, fair. Councillor Eddie Kelly?
Thanks, Your Worship. Ladies, due to the age of the children in your care, proximity is valued.
Mhm.
So for example, perhaps like Rotary Park might be a little too far.
Yeah, we did think about Rotary Park. We do go to Rotary Park fairly often, particularly in the summer. It's a great place to go, but it's definitely on a daily basis, just this challenge for the educators to get all the kids there, particularly in the winter, would be, yeah, really challenging. And it also just doesn't really, I mean, you could fence an area down there, I guess, but yeah, there would be, it's definitely less ideal, just that distance.
Thank you. Anything else from council? Thank you, ladies. That was very insightful and helpful. Appreciate the presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Can I add one more thing?
Of course.
Just, I know like there's a lot of details if this were to go ahead and I really appreciate the thoughts in terms of like the long-term planning and solutioning. And at the same time, it is next week that we have to have all of our equipment out of the building. And I wish that we got to, bring this up sooner. And so I'm just wondering about like a interim ability to like physically move our stuff, even without a fence and stuff, to that area, which would, then we wouldn't have to move it somewhere else and then potentially move it there later. But I'll just leave that for
Well, no, I
consideration.
appreciate that thought because
Yeah.
we are in committee of the whole, so this is
Mhm.
can be fairly open conversation. But I'm wondering if, like, I like the idea of entering into a negotiation with you and determining what that would look like as a temporary solution for your current
Mhm.
situation. And I'd look to council and see if anyone's interested in moving that once we get out of committee, moving that so we can get
Okay.
this conversation
Okay.
going, and maybe that's one of the interim steps. Sorry, Mr. Bornowski, were you saying something or?
Yeah, we have if I can, your worship and council, we have a pretty formal storage practice around public spaces that generally is stuff being secured in city sheds, that it's not just out and located. Mr. Logan, you may want to comment on that a little bit.
Do we have any available storage space? I know we're pretty tapped for storage space, but where this stuff could go in the interim until we sort this out?
Yeah, a couple comments from my perspective, just for consideration of council. The idea of the space being utilized by the public, we would just have to really hash out where the maintenance comes from, who performs it, are there inspections happening? I'm not thrilled about the idea of having an area that's not fenced without that agreement in place already, because it does put the city at risk for liability should something happen to anyone using the equipment without that in place. As far as storage goes, yeah, we've done quite extensive work to try and clean up all of our city spaces and conform to a specific shed or a storage solution that the city offers. I can't think of a space right now, and I'm not familiar with all the equipment they have right now that we could store it in the interim. But we could look at those options and bring them back to them to discuss.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any room on the current, not on the garden, but on the current building site to store that stuff temporarily, perhaps between the church and the building, or I'm literally thinking aloud, so I
Yeah,
apologize.
we could ask. I doubt that it would be allowed.
Would it help if you asked and you were in active negotiations with the city? Would that be?
Maybe. One of the
Maybe.
challenges that everything has to go through the priest, and the priest is currently in India for the
Oh.
next 2 months.
Oh,
And it's all very formal through the diocese.
Yeah.
And so we can ask, but often we'll submit a letter and not hear anything back for like a month.
okay.
So we can
Even though-
try. I
Yeah.
can, reach out to some of the parish council members. In terms of storage, one thing is that Tanya, who's the lead for the Fernie Family Garden,
Mhm.
is trying to redistribute all the things that the Fernie Family Garden has put into this space. And one thing she mentioned was the shed that they have in there, and that they could potentially like sell us the shed. So yeah, I don't know about like, we do have just a box for kind of storing toys, but the
Yeah.
shed does lock, and that's an option that we could secure some things.
Would it be adequate?
But it wouldn't
for your
like fit,
needs?
it wouldn't fit large play structures, but it
No,
would
fair.
fit like, blocks and.
Play tables and
Yeah,
things,
watering cans and wheelbarrows and stuff. Yeah. Anyways.
Councillor Ramnes? Mr. Logan, sorry.
Sorry, I would think if we're talking structures and sheds, then we would have to look more closely at the heritage
Yeah, I suspect that's fair.
alteration permit.
That's a fair
We do offer a city storage shed, our shed rental program. You can find information about it online. And we just recently installed one at the Ball Diamonds.
Councillor Ramnes?
Thanks, Your Worship. Now we are really getting into logistical issues
Yeah,
here, right?
yeah, yeah.
I think there are commercial solutions out there. If the proponents and the parents can come together and figure out some way to make it happen, that would be my suggestion here.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we're sort of diving into the weeds, and that's largely my fault, so I apologize for that. But yeah, I think as we come out of committee here, if somebody's willing to put forward a motion that we enter into a negotiation for a temporary solution on the courthouse grounds, I think that would be, at least get us moving in the right direction. And yeah, I very much appreciate the comments that several councillors have made about the value of having children on public land. I think that's a very important consideration. So thank you very much for your presentation. Councillor McKays.
Thank you, Worship. I'm happy to put forward that we bring this forward into the regular meeting but by the same token, I want to make sure that while we make good efforts to support this group and have space for kids and all that stuff, I would not want to see us fast track this and skip fairness discussions and legal implications of the use of the property and so on. And I'm very sympathetic to this group and their time, but I'm not willing to sacrifice the liability of the city or the use of the property by other citizens and so on because of that.
Yeah,
So
no.
I'm happy to move this forward, but I really think we need to do our due diligence and our processes.
Yeah, I understand that. And certainly those issues have all been raised around the table in terms of procedural fairness and how we're treating other organizations, et cetera. So I think that would be, I trust that would be part of the consideration as staff entered into this conversation with folks. But thank you for that. With that, I'll ask for a mover and a seconder that council return to the regular council meeting. Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Shoesmith. Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. So we're now in a regular meeting and issues arising from the committee of the whole. Do you perchance have a draft resolution that would work for this circumstance? Yeah, would you mind? Should we go take a 5-minute break? Absolutely. Yeah, okay. Ms. Rhodes, we'll go on 5-minute break. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Rhodes. Welcome back, everybody. And with that, I'll turn to our corporate officer who's drafted sorry, could I ask you to, thank you. That's okay.
Okay. Know that this is from your dialogue
Thank you.
this evening, that the city enter into negotiations with the Wild Wapiti Society regarding the temporary non-exclusive use of a portion of the courthouse grounds to establish an outdoor play space, and that council directs staff to discuss potential storage options with the society.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Shoesmith. Any further discussion? Councillor Hamilton.
The one thing that I'm thinking about during the break is, in deference to the notion that a lot of temporary things suddenly find themselves becoming permanent, that if in our negotiations or we kind of task staff with the mandate of making it a 1-year lease with the option to renew twice, so total of 3 years total, just kind of helps put some fairly strict guardrails, I guess, around ensuring that this doesn't become a longer term solution. I'm happy to hear discussion around that.
Thank you. Councillor McIsaac.
That was good anticipation there.
Pre-verbal
Got my
tension.
finger up, yes. Actually, I wanted to speak about an additional comment to that, and that I was thinking about during the break, and that is leasing out a corner of the courthouse property to a playground feels like a good idea if we can find a way to make it work for everybody then in a proper time frame and all the stuff. I am thoughtful of the notion that we could potentially see many more requests like this, because green space is at a premium for lots of organizations. So something that should be considered within the negotiations, including the temporary nature of this particular arrangement, should be highlighted to, if we are presented with other people and we want to, and I'm sure we do as a council, want to be as fair as possible to all organizations. This negotiation should consider the possibility that we could get a bunch of other potential requests for this. Just something to consider.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. I think actually Councillor Hamilton's suggestion sort of really highlights the temporary nature with the ability to renew annually. I think sort of brings that into sharp focus. Councillor Artie Kelly.
Also, Your Worship, the motion itself speaks to non-exclusive use.
It does, yeah. Yeah, insofar as that area would be available to the public generally, yeah. Mr. Bornowski.
The director, Logan, has raised just some valid points. When we do non-exclusive use for, improved piece of land, there has to be like a maintenance program, inspections, documentation. And so it would be to the society to ensure that they are undertaking those kind of documentations and inspections and making sure that facility was safe. So they do take on some liability or responsibility for that non-exclusive use, if it is indeed non-exclusive. If it is exclusive use, then the consideration of fairness does come with a consideration of lease rates that we have leased lands to with other not-for-profit societies. And so there's probably a different financial consideration to like an exclusive and permanent use. But from your dialogue and the presentation, I think I'm hearing that a non-exclusive and open to the public use is preferred, acknowledging that things like snow clearing aren't done by the city at that property. It's fully leased out. Grounds maintenance, we do some mowing. So there are services we don't provide that would have to form part of that discussion.
Yeah, and I expect those would all be part of the negotiation in terms of the temporary nature of this, that would all be at least discussed, if not included in the final agreement. Any other comments? Well, we have a mover and a seconder. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. And thank you to Wild Wapiti for the presentation this evening. That moves us right along to item 11.1, the Elk Valley Kids Club Society lease, a presentation from our CAO.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Council, I do not have a PowerPoint presentation. I will very briefly walk you through the high points of the report and then open the floor to questions. This document has been in front of you a number of times. This public presentation represents its release from in camera because it considered negotiations, and it's closed meetings. And so there are only the very specific modifications directed by council to the last agreement and which were returned from the board as agreeable. And so what we're presenting is a lease with the Elk Valley Kids Club Society for a portion of the Max Turek Community Center. It was developed in communication with council, but under the mandate for leases that council provided to staff to advance and modernize our lease program. It's another one of those, another one of the childcare operators in the city of Fernie where the city provides space. The lease area is about 147 square meters. That's 13% of the leasable area at Max Turek. The term is for a period of 4 years with gradual increases over that term. By the final year of 2029, that reaches $13 per square foot as negotiated between the parties. There is some procedural requirement here. If council does direct execution, we then have 2 consecutive weeks at least of public notification because of the publishing schedule of the paper. That probably means 3 consecutive weeks of waiting for our 2 public notification ads to go out in the paper, and then that comes back for execution. That's required anytime we dispose of some or all of our interest in lands by way of a land use agreement or a lease or anything. So just reiterating, we are not because of the legislative framework we live within, we're not a fast and nimble land use organization. It just is what it is. I will note this does gradually increase revenues to the city by about $1,600 a year per year over the course of the term. That is the balance between sustainable operations for the society and our targets of moving closer to recovery of costs such that we can better fund maintenance of these facilities. Staff are recommending that council authorize execution once public notice is complete, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions from council? Yeah, the report was pretty complete, Mr. Bornowski, as was the lease was every bit as detailed as always. So thank you for that. Councilor Ramirez.
I'd like to move it, Your Worship.
Seconder, Councilor Nixon. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Councilor, for moving that along.
Thank you.
Item 11.2, Resort Development Strategy, report from our Director of Parks, Facilities and Recreation, Mr. Logan.
I didn't memorize it. Well, I was gonna.
Good evening, Council. What I'm going to attempt to do is hopefully the first slide notes are just missing and the rest is there. I may have to switch over to my laptop for the rest of the presentation if they're not accurate notes. I'll find out very shortly. Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, I will be presenting the draft resort development strategy for the next 3 years and hopefully receiving your endorsement of the plan. In April, meeting invitations went out to various community partners, including Tourism Fernie, Fernie and Districts Arts Council, the YQT, Fernie Chamber of Commerce, Fernie Heritage Society, Fernie Trails Alliance, Elk River Alliance, and a community member at large. We scheduled 6 hour-and-a-half long meetings with 1 additional meeting requested by the group. Together, we created the goals and indicators of the strategy, completed a strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats analysis, distilled a large list down to a few high-impact projects, and discussed at length core tourism events and application-based events, service, and animation. I'd like to take this opportunity to express my appreciation to the group for their time and thoughtful participation. The timeline was aggressive, and I'm proud of what we were able to accomplish in that time. Now we'll see if my notes transferred to this. No, it did not. Deb, could I get you to forward the thing as I go, and I'll just read it. Here. The initial introductory RDS presentation to council included 5 priorities, and they're on the screen. The RDS draft document includes linkages to other plans such as the Tourism Master Plan, the OCP, Heritage Society or Heritage Strategy, Tourism Fernie Strategic Business Plan, Strategic Framework for Tourism in BC, the Accessibility Plan, and the Active Transportation Master Plan. It was essential for the group to include in this RDS document the need for continuity with the working group and the following terms RDS development to ensure that the process remains uninterrupted and the group is updated on progress throughout the 3-year RDS term, which is 2025, 2026. I was also given the opportunity to work from Grassmere at the YQT office for a few days where I discussed the plan and project with their CAO. I intend to give a presentation to their band council at a future date to gain a deeper understanding of how they might wish to participate in the projects. Preliminary feedback from the province was provided and included in the documents attached to this evening's agenda. The comments after review of the first draft were as, and I quote, clear and concise and aligns well with the program. Next slide. So core events and biannual event applications is one of the 2 programs, events and service projects that makes up the 30% of the funding. This is multi-year funding for key tourism-driven events, which include Grizz Days for $40,000 previously provided through council resolution, Wednesday night socials for $15,000, Wham Bam, Holiday Kickoff, Elk Valley Pride Festival, each receiving $6,000 per year. In addition to the funding allocated to the core tourism events in the 3-year RDS, the city would continue to provide existing structured in-kind support to the events on the list, as well as the additional events identified in the strategy as core tourism events, meaning all events will receive in-kind from city staff. Biannual event funding intakes will support the development of new and growing events that align with the RDS goals and attract shoulder season overnight stays, which are spring, fall, and early winter. For 2025, there will only be 1 intake of $15,000, and the remaining 2 years, there will be 2 intakes of $15,000, one in the spring and one in the fall. Next slide. The Winter Grooming Collaborative is the second program events and service project that supports the consistent grooming of Fernie's winter trails and the related infrastructure enhancing winter recreation opportunities. The RDS project for this collaborative is $38,000 per year, representing a reduction from the funding provided during COVID-19 pandemic, as we are unable to host events during that time. The Grooming Collaborative members invest significant funds to make the grooming program a success. The RMI funds help support their work of grooming over 90 kilometers of multi-use and Nordic trails, snow clearing and maintenance of parking areas, as well as regular communication and grooming updates, coordination of volunteers and paid groomers, data collection, trail animation, and event support. Next one. The animation infrastructure project includes the installation of murals, seasonal flower plantings downtown and at various facilities, replacement Christmas decorations, enhanced downtown planting seating,
and some event support infrastructure to assist in animating the downtown core and enhanced year-round visitor appeal. Next slide. Gathering and staging hub enhancements. This infrastructure project is to develop a network of visitor staging areas equipped with consistent amenities. For example, seating, bike racks, garbage cans, maps. Staging areas will be linked to interpretive signage and trail maps. This project may also include investment on private property, with agreements in place to ensure access to that investment for a period minimum of 5 years. The intent of this project is to move towards a synchronized visitor experience when using a staging area, whether on private or public land. Next slide. The signage interpretive and wayfinding project is expanded to deliver modern, inclusive signage that integrates Indigenous storytelling, emergency preparedness, and wayfinding for safe and accessible navigation across Fernie's tourism areas, linking areas for staging and gathering throughout the community, and taking the active transportation master plan collector routes into consideration. The Station Square Enhancement Project was initially proposed to transform Station Square into a year-round pedestrian-friendly gathering hub for events and cultural programming through hardscape improvements, shade structures, public seating, and signage. The RDS strategy recommends permanently closing Station Square from First Avenue to the alleyway on 6th Street to create a functional event space and an inviting all-season gathering area in the downtown core. If this is endorsed, a communication and engagement plan specific to this project will be actioned. Since the draft was provided to the province for review, we have received feedback from both the Chamber and Tourism Fernie as well as the Legion regarding concerns specific to the year-round closure and its impact on parking and traffic flow downtown. Council may wish to adjust the staff recommendation to avoid the year-round closure and work to improve the space without a partial permanent closure of 6th Ave. I would be remiss not to mention the multiple previous attempts at enhancing Station Square over the years, with parking affecting our ability to address the need for shading the space, and an aged mobile vendor bylaw, which have made it challenging to enhance the space effectively while retaining its historical use.
Apologies. I'm not sure how to phrase this question. So if we endorse the program as presented, we are endorsing the advancement to a full closure of Station Square, or are we endorsing a community engagement process that provides council and staff with a vision of what Station Square could look like, including potential enhancements that fall short, for example, of year-round closure, or portions that may be closed for some months on end for the socials or something of that nature. I'm just curious where we find ourselves here.
Yeah, through to council. I have provided an alternate recommendation at the end that would change the recommendation slightly to endorse the strategy, but also remove the consideration to a permanent closure of a portion of 6th Ave. I feel that council can adjust that to be to not include a permanent closure of the space period, and we can maintain the seasonal closure that we do from June, the mid-June to September type deal. So there's a number of options.
And in that, we wouldn't necessarily forego certain enhancements, like improvements to the hardscaping, pavers versus pavement, for example. Shade sales for a period of the summer versus year round.
Yes, all the projects in the resort development strategy are very high level at the moment.
Okay.
As I mentioned in the previous report to council, when we introduced starting to develop the plan, It was mentioned that we would create project charters for each individual project. This one specifically would require a robust communication engagement process, especially if we were considering a permanent closure. Probably less so if we weren't. It's really just enhancing the space to promote more events and make it a more inviting space for people to come off Second Ave and have lunch or whatever it might be. So provided your direction, we can work within what you'd prefer to see. And if a closure isn't part of that, then we can
Thank you,
remove
Mr.
that
Logan.
from the project.
I appreciate that. Councillor Artie Kelly, you had a comment?
Thanks, Your Worship. Further to your comments, actually, a couple of things. What if during OCP renewal or other strategic processes, it comes to light or it changes the vision that Station Square is the hub? How committed are we then to the total funding dollars in that space if we say, just for devil's advocacy here, to page out of Councillor McIsaac's book, what if we completely say that isn't the community hub that we foresee in the future? What if we see it in a totally different spot? How committed are we to this funding? We have had several, or I have had several conversations with community members and business people concerned about the closure, in addition to just the overall location. And definitely I really appreciate the work that everyone did for the RDS, and I don't want to denigrate that in any way. And I know your timelines were tight, but we have OCP renewal coming, strategic plan revisitation coming. So if we were to endorse this plan, even with the modification that robust public engagement had to occur, how committed are we to those funds in that place?
Through to council, that would be for council to decide, or the community through the OCP review process. To date, my since beginning with the city in 2018 was to develop that space into a event space. I've had previous resolutions from council or direction from council to install storage, to enhance the electricity for events, to a couple other handful of things. And I think this process all started with the installation of the washrooms originally. So do I personally think it's the best event space in our downtown core? It's debatable. But this is the direction that staff believes that is where we're headed, hence the proposed project.
Mr. Borodowski?
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillors, your question, can I paraphrase it? I heard it a different way. I understand what Director Logan is saying. Are you asking technically how tied are we to this specific project as a year 3 project, front-loaded with consultation? If we get through that work in our OCP and direction says go left based on that, is that more the question?
That's definitely part of it. And I do understand and appreciate what Director Logan is saying, but it's not 2018 anymore.
If I may then, Your Worship, the RDS is a 3-year contract with the province for the municipality to deliver on its municipal funding with the projects that are outlined. We would complete a project change form. The new project would have to conform to the outcomes of the RMI program, the goals that we are proposing, and we'd have to demonstrate alignment and some support. But generally, it's a contract modification, and we've done that previously, including adjusting some downtown beautification funding in the last RDS and assigning it to another capital project to get that across the line, which is what it is. Sometimes you have to move the funds between the projects to try and achieve completion and meaningful outcomes. Ideally, we have plans, set plans, work through them, follow through, but absolutely sometimes community direction changes that, and so there's a mechanism to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Borodowski. Councillor Ramanas.
Thanks, Your Worship. I think Councillor Artie Kelly covered most of the things that I wanted to ask. One additional question I had was, a little confused with the gap here, right? You said you had 7 different meetings with different community groups, if I understood right, before this came to the council. Then why is this a confusion? Were you just continuing the 2018 plan into this presentation, or? My question is, like, there have been several feedback now this evening, as well as some of the letters, right? About people's reluctance to have this year-round closure. So my question is, how did that still end up on the agenda here if it was still being worked out?
If I may, through to council. Our agenda packages are prepared 20, how many days? 20-something days in advance. I have made alterations from the provincial feedback in the documents you see before you today. But as some of the members of the advisory working group have mentioned, the timeline being expedited, the 9 or so people in the room were well aware of the milestones in the project, so the steps in the project and what the project was meant to achieve. However, the feedback from some of those members' boards was not received until very recent. So that's why I mentioned it in the report now, but it did not have time to adjust what we're proposing to council. That's why I'm recommending potentially a change to the initial recommendation in the report.
Yeah, fair enough, Mr. Logan. And I think it's fair to say at the table, at the time, given the time constraints, this was endorsed by that group to bring forward to council for consideration. Fair?
Yes, that's correct.
Further?
One completely unrelated question, Your Worship. With respect to grooming, the winter grooming program, does that cover the dike grooming also?
Through to council, you'll notice, or maybe didn't, in the financial plan in the back, the total amount for grooming includes a portion of what the city sets aside for grooming the dike trail, similar to the grooming collaborative, where they invest a tremendous amount of their own money, and it's complemented by some RDS money. My position as the one in charge of parks is that we should also be contributing public funds, and then RDS would also, within the strategy, there might be a top up of that total bill for grooming of the dike. So it still is in the plan for maintaining grooming of the dike, and a portion of that grooming collaborative money may go towards reducing that impact on the taxpayer.
Councillor Nixon, did I miss your hand there earlier?
Yes, well, sort of. I mean, yeah, it's a confusing thing. Thank you, Mayor Milligan. So the alley will still be open for this, away from the winter grooming. The alley will still be open for all the commercial traffic that goes through there for Station Square as well in that area. Is that correct?
Yes, through council, the original proposal in the project outline that you're reviewing had a closure from essentially after the alleyway to First Avenue, not closing First Avenue. So we're talking about the small section of roadway right in front of the art station. And that's more or less how we close it for an event anyway. The first time we tried the initial seasonal closure, we actually went right up to First to Second. And that wasn't received well for a number of reasons. As I mentioned, the mobile vendors had difficulty getting in there. And then there was a lot of concerns around deliveries to the businesses that use the alleyway. So what we were recommending as a group was to avoid those two things and just start the closure right after the alleyway up until Second. So Second could still be used, or First, sorry, could still be used as the one-way traffic as it does right now. And the mobile vendors could pull in and out without having to remove barricades or anything.
Councillor McIsaac and then Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I wanted to say that, well, a couple things. One was that I think the current planned closure between the alley and First is excellent, because I feel like from Second to First created a lot of consternation there, just as you just finished outlining, Director Logan. I guess I wanted to add a little bit of context. The idea of Station Square being a central location goes back a long time, back to my first run on council, and the end of Station Square was set up for staging. There was power was put in there, conduit was put underneath the thing, underneath the street in order to support music and theater and so on being played there. Bollard positions and bollards were erected at either end for street closures, all this thing. So the idea of that particular space being closed off and available for events has been around for, well, we're getting to 15 plus years here or longer. And so that's not new. And the reason is because plenty of people and organizations supported having a central location where everybody would know that events are happening and so on. And yes, I recognize that there are organizations that have concerns about this, about especially around closure. And I will admit, I'm not sure if I see the value of having picnic tables and sunshades out in February. Not sure how well that's going to go off. But as far as closing off that area in the summer and having it available for events and so on, this is a long-standing thing. Yes, it's possible that the next OCP could suddenly generate a new space that everybody wants to go to, and that becomes passé. But this is not new. This is a long-standing, continuous process that over the years has added storage, and then it added bathrooms and so on. So this has been a long-standing, continuous process to make that space available and useful for the whole community. So the year-round thing, perhaps a little less supportive of, but using that space in support of.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. My question was kind of similar vein, but a little bit more technical specific. With the proposed closure, I know there's a lot of concern about loss of parking spaces. Do we know exactly how many parking spaces would be lost with this proposal?
Through to council, unfortunately, I don't. It was one of the things I was meant to quit or drive by and look or quiz someone on the streets team. We've tried a number of different configurations in there. One year we had a really nice logo put in by the art station. And when we did the closure initially, that was something that was sort of forgotten about is, oh yeah, right. When we open it again, we're going to have to do lines because now it's all configured differently. So that would be part of this project. I would think if the direction was to stay away from a 6th Street closure, how could we keep the parking on 6th? Do we then require the parking in Station Square over winter? And what does that look like if we try to install shade structures or seating or those types of things? So again, that would all be unpacked as we go through the project with the project charter sort of leading the steps.
Councillor Nixon.
Thank you again, Mayor Milligan. So it would be to the where the bathrooms are, we would close that entire area to that would be it for the parking, right? From the front, basically from the stage all the way to the bathrooms, which looking at this, it looks about maybe 20 spots that we would lose. And the street right now from this aerial picture looks like seven cars. You know what? I mean, I really like this. I like the idea of it. I would support it. We were just at AKBLG in Kimberley, and the Platzel is a relaxing space. And kids run around there. Parents don't have to worry about cars. It's a really nice spot. I mean, sometimes it's pretty quiet. It was established in 1973. So it's like 53 years old. And they have been able to do it. And I think we need the courage to do it as well. I really like the idea of it. So I'll support this.
Mr. Logan.
One thing, if I could just emphasize, which was a very good point brought up by various groups that had concerns, was the ability to animate the space, especially over winter. So really the only event that we would host there with snow would be Grizz Days. So it is a very good point that should be considered, that if the space is closed permanently, how are we going to animate it? And I think the feedback from community partners is that maybe there isn't capacity to add additional animation throughout the winter months. So that's an important consideration. If it's closed and sits there empty, it might not be the best use of the space year round.
I think that is a very important consideration because I think about what we've seen animated there in winter, and it's Grizz Days. Occasionally the holiday train pulls in there and then the holiday kickoff. Like it's pretty limited, and we have received concern from the Arts Council that even the socials are sometimes difficult to sustain through the summer. So it feels like enhancements to that space are a good idea, but a strategy that in my mind, and I certainly don't speak for council, but in my mind, improves the space for use in the summer, because we've all seen people lined up in the shade of one power pole during a performance, because it does get blisteringly hot there. So I think there's opportunity there, but I think there's also a conversation to be had with our wider community as to what the best outcome is. Councillor Shoesmith.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. Seeing as everybody else has beat this to death, I'll just beat it some more. Having read the letters I've received and chatted with some people, my mind takes the bent that why fix what isn't broken? I think the continued improvement's good, but most people seem to agree with that. Where people dig in their heels is the full closure. I think that that's probably a bridge too far. And on a slightly different subject here, a lot of people say that they like this town because of the authentic feel. It's a real town. It's a town that exists as more than like a store window in a mall kind of thing. And, in reading through here, I noticed things like upgrading outdated references such as the Ghost Riders and the Miners Walk. Spelling error with that one. I don't think we've had miners working at the mines in a long time. But I would add that those outdated references, I think, are part of what this town is. And I think that papering over a bunch of that with something shiny and new and different, I'm not sure will land or resonate with the bulk of the town's 6,000 or 7,000 residents. So I'm kind of looking a little askance at that. I like the idea of cleaning the place up, making things more convenient for the visitors and such. But as far as the upgrading the Miners Walk or the Ghost Riders, I mean, those are large anchors of the town's culture in a way, and I don't think that should be done. Thank you.
I'm just acknowledging your message there, sorry. Our councillor may have to leave shortly, so just let people know that. Thank you, Councillor Smith. Other comments? Councillor Ramirez.
Just going back to the downtown part, Your Worship, I agree with Councillor Shoesmith. These are two separate issues. The infrastructure improvement there versus the year-round closure. I'm in support of the infrastructure improvement, but not so much with the year-round closure. They are two separate things. We should just consider it as separate discussions.
Yeah, I do think there's a valuable conversation to be had with whether it's the Downtown Business Association, the nascent Downtown Business Association, or others to what is the best use of that space. And I think there's value in that for sure, but at this juncture, I do struggle with the notion of a permanent closure or a year-round closure, because as we've said, the animation through the year is a struggle. It's a struggle now, and it will just continue to be a struggle. So, Councillor Adi Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. One of the comments that resonated for me was also the comment about flexibility. So I'm not comfortable with a permanent closure, to be honest. I also do really appreciate what Councillor Shoesmith said about heritage, because I think a large part of the appeal of our community is heritage. So some of the elements of this plan, in my opinion, require a little bit broader public engagement.
Mr. Logan.
Sorry, through to council, if I could just clarify a couple of comments that Councillor Shoesmith made. With regards to the miners walk, that was in reference to just the Ghost Rider image itself. I have had preliminary conversations with the CAO of YQT, but I'd like to fully understand their feelings towards that. And that's the only reference to changing the miners walk. We're not proposing we rip it up and replace it with something new. That's purely in reference to the Ghost Rider logo that's on some of our signage. There used to be an information plaque in the miners walk we've since removed. And we just want to make sure that if we revisit those, that we're doing it mindfully, considering the YQTs.
Thank you, Mr. Logan. I think that's an excellent response, not least of all because as we embark on this journey of reconciliation with our Indigenous partners, I think we need to be very mindful of where we are potentially giving offense based on misconstrued or historic stories. So I think I appreciate that perspective. Thank you. You're just on Station Square enhancements. I'm sure you have more slides. Okay, carry on.
You go to the next one. Oh, there it is. Trail development, remediation, and impact management. This infrastructure project addresses trail overuse with repairs, rerouting, new development, and interpretive signage to ensure the longevity and quality of Fernie's extensive trail network. The Fernie Trails Alliance will lead this project and collaborate with various trail groups, potentially involving investment in private property. Agreements will be required to ensure access to those investments for a minimum of 5 years, and this project will require the creation of a tourism trail list based on TMP priority segments and data-supported tourism trails.
Councillor Hamilton?
Thank you. I've just got a question about the mechanism of that 5-year agreement and what sort of recourse would exist if, we enter into an agreement, bunch of investments done on a private property, 3 years time, 4 years time, suddenly that doesn't exist. How might the city or I guess the province recoup that investment?
I'll try my best to answer, but I might refer to the CAO to follow up. The notion of a 5-year agreement comes from the province with respect to infrastructure. So for example, the buses that were purchased using RDS were required to retain those for 5 years for the use they were intended. If we were to sell that, the money towards those buses, and that's a slide coming up later, would go towards the same project. Using that logic, I've noted that we would try to apply this to infrastructure improvements through either staging areas on private property or trail enhancements on private property, and at least with the landowners, achieve continued access, public access for a minimum of 5 years. I believe that opens the door to the conversation of potentially longer term agreements, depending on how much investment. But those conversations haven't happened yet, and we don't know where they're going to go. The province, from my understanding, really doesn't have a good answer on that. I think it's not unique to Fernie that we would spend money through the RMI program on private property or trails specifically, especially if that's a big attractant to the visitor. So if the CAO has anything else to color in there.
This is something that I've tried to communicate with the province on significantly over this year, because they were becoming increasingly clear that public funds should not be invested to improve private lands without formal agreements that investment would be secured for public access. And so the answer through all of those discussions is they want to see at least a minimum of a 5-year commitment in terms of public access. They would prefer longer. And I think the reason the answer really is it depends is that it will depend on what the landowner is willing to negotiate and then whether council is willing to enter into that kind of a land use agreement with that landowner. Some may be perfectly happy to enter an agreement that says, sure, you're going to install pit toilets, a bike service station, a covered area, and some picnic tables at the staging area to my trailhead. Great. I'll give you a guarantee of 5 years public access. And if I have to move it or remove it, in the agreement, we'll stipulate that you'll receive something of equal value and similar standard, and we're off to the races. And some may just say no. A number of municipalities have had a habit of investing in infrastructure that's wound up on private lands. And the province has obviously taken note over the past few years, and they're just becoming more focused on the matter. So we're taking it seriously and just working well through our contract with them.
And does the province provide templates for those sorts of agreements?
They do not.
Okay.
If I may, they do not, and they will not review or provide advice or guidance based on those agreements.
Fair enough. Yeah. It's in our hands. Councillor Roddy Kelly.
Just a little further clarification, CAO. So we would have to negotiate those agreements. Then what if the province doesn't provide us guidance? Can the province then say, well, I don't like your agreement?
They may say we'd like to see a stronger agreement. In my experience, and I always have to recognize specifically Don Ruckle and Oriana Fuller with the Ministry of Tourism, Arts, Culture and Sport. They're fantastic to work with. We have open dialogue all the time. They understand the challenges. We speak regularly. They'd work with us to achieve success, not look at to punish. But it happens, you know, bridges get built over a ravine on a trail that passes over private land. The landowner wants it removed. You have to reroute a trail. Like these things happen in BC, and in particular in the Elk Valley, where we aren't as fortunate to be surrounded by unceded public lands or crown lands.
Councillor McIsaac.
Thank you, Your Worship. Not to be pedantic about this, but typically the notion to build something on a trail on private land, it's not usually driven by us. It's usually coming like from the FTA or some sort of thing. So I guess what I'm wondering is has what you've been explaining to us been communicated to them as far as what land use agreements are going to have to look like, what the province is going to, expectations are going to be, and so on? Has there been a good dialogue there?
Through to council, not with the landowners specifically, but with the FTA and Tourism Fernie at the table, they would obviously be key partners in that whole discussion. As with all projects in the plan, it's important not to go too far into the project before council's endorsing it. And again, through the project charters, we would try and label the steps as clear as possible. Just to add to Michael's comments on the agreements in place, the province has requested to see those when we do have them in draft form or whichever. And that might be because maybe we are one of the first municipalities to actually enter into some of those agreements.
Councillor Shoesmith.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. For clarity, my own and the viewers, this is quite the big plan. This is what the word omnibus comes to mind. It's huge. There's lots going on here. You guys did a lot of work. There's a lot of things in this. Will council's endorsement at this juncture, how to put it? Sorry. Will endorsing this plan allow all of the things in here, because there's a lot of things, to run through to completion without coming back to council? Or will each of these things generally come back to us, particularly the larger, more important ones?
Those requiring legal agreements or purchases over a capacity or where there's consultation, I would say specifically the consideration of improvements to Station Square would come back to you. The others would not. For example, we do not consult with council on how the maps are done by Tourism Fernie or the grooming program. We rely on the excellent delivery partners who do the work.
Thanks for parsing the meaning out of my word salad.
Mr. Logan, back to you.
And the last project, the winter shuttle replacement project, is to purchase a larger capacity bus and streamline operations to improve shuttle services between accommodators downtown and the ski area during the winter season. The 3 buses, each costing $80,000 purchased under the last strategy, were undersized and have proven to increase budgets for their maintenance and staff operations. A larger bus replacing 2 smaller ones, leaving 1 smaller bus left over, would better serve visitors and reduce ongoing costs for the service provider. So in this project, we're proposing taking the 2 buses bought last year, which we still need to be retained for 5 years. The money from either trading those in or selling them off would then go towards the purchase of a new single larger bus with that fleet consisting of 1 small bus and 1 big bus.
Councillor Ramirez and then Councillor Hamilton.
Thanks, Your Worship. Will that impact the frequency of service?
The way I understand it, and I'm not the best one to answer this, with the smaller buses, I feel like if there's a large lineup of people, we're leaving some people behind. The buses are quite small. The parameters that we were purchasing them under was from this seating capacity to this seating capacity. We were on the lower end of that seating capacity. And when you pack it full of skiers with snowboarders and skis with them, it's quite tight. So a lot of times I feel, or I know from feedback, is that it's not serving the visitors well.
Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. I mean, the title of the slide is Winter Visitor and Ski Shuttle. I'm curious what discussions were had around a year-round shuttle service to and from the resort or within the community.
Maybe Your Worship remembers. I don't specifically remember any conversations around a year-round
Specific to this at the RDS discussion, I don't think so, but I don't know if we can call someone up from the gallery. I thought we actually tried a summer shuttle at one point. And Mr. Bornowski, do you remember the outcome?
Tourism Fernie is the operator. This project is specifically the procurement of the piece of infrastructure, right? Then it's operated by a partner. This would be Tourism Fernie and whomever they're also partnering with. They can speak in detail, but piloted and just found to not be hugely popular during the summer months in how it was delivered. But that's not to speak to whether they have designs on further expansion. Council will recall that transit and transportation is one of their priorities as a board, as discussed at their AGM.
Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just cruising through my notes here, and you probably won't know this, but we had a 30% increase from 2023 to 2024, I think it was. Over 10,000 tickets were sold. Do we have any ridership numbers for last year? I mean, I'd be really curious as to if we saw a big jump again. That would be really good. Anyways, just a comment more than a question, I guess.
Sounded a lot like a question.
Okay, it's a question, but it's unanswerable at this point unless there's consultation with somebody.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Oh,
Mr. Logan.
Okay. I don't actually have those numbers.
Fair.
The comment I did want to share with council was that one of the, I would say the only comment from the province was to remove the operation of the shuttle from the project outline. So that's really the only significant change from the feedback.
What we're looking at is the purchase of a bus.
Correct.
Disposition of 2, purchase of 1, working with a partner to develop an operations framework. That has nothing to do with the operations of it.
No, this project specifically is just the trading in or the selling of 2 to purchase 1 larger one.
Thank you. Councillor McIsaac.
Thanks, Your Worship. I apologize if this is a bit oblique, but is not using RMI money for operations like a standard philosophy from the province? Is that a general guideline from them?
No, but you will recall that we have a very thin sliver for events, animation, and services. And there's a huge community demand for support for events, animation, and visitor services. And since we're only allowed to use 30% of our total RMI funding for that, we look to maximize our capital purchase through funding. And so if you're going to fund operating the shuttle with RDS funding, then you're cutting back on funding for a service or an animation or an event.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you.
Councillor Hamilton?
Thank you. My question isn't pertinent to the purchase of the new shuttle, but rather the operations of the old shuttle. And I recall in our last conversation around the council table, there was quite a bit of discussion around reporting on the results from that. And so Councillor Nixon's question just triggered that in me, and curious if we can expect a report on winter's operations and such.
I wasn't going to prepare a formal report to council because it's now a service just provided by a community partner, but I can certainly provide the data, and we do prepare an annual report that does get circulated to council. So you'll see the data and statistics for the performance measures for the programs we delivered, but not as a distinct separate report and presentation to council.
Thank you, Mr. Bornowski. Mr. Logan, back to you.
So here's the RDS financial plan. You'll notice that the majority of the infrastructure projects are back-end loaded. This is by design, as the current year doesn't allow for the integration of projects into existing city department work plans and leaves little time to execute them before the year's end. Having most infrastructure projects concluded in 2027 will facilitate ease of reporting and provide an opportunity to complete project change forms mid-strategy if required, like the Station Square as an example.
Councillor Ravenous?
But I just had a question about the signage portion of this plan. I know we had quite a bit of a challenge when it came to those black sign operators when we installed the City of Fernie sign. Are there any lessons learned from that you're going to apply to this particular stream of work?
Many. Many. It's really hard when your supplier essentially becomes functionally bankrupt and closes up shop midstream. That was an exceptionally challenging project and relationship, and very unfortunate, but yeah, many. And I'd just like to highlight that is in the depths of COVID, that quick recovery funding was at a breakneck speed, and with the help of some gracious partners, we got a compelling application in. And since that time, also our capital project delivery is vastly improved. Our contract management is improved. You see our projects on time and at budget, and performance is just so much better. We're specifically not recommending building more of those welcome signs with that vendor, though, which are two very big learnings.
Councillor Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. A little tiny bit related. Just wanted to say that the sign is very nice. And I think Director did a very good job in challenging circumstances. So thanks to Director. Just a general sort of financial kind of question. Do we have to tender like certain elements of this plan? For example, like 415,000 for Station Squares, a pretty large number. Like, is there can you just refresh my memory on what needs to go out to tender?
Thanks, Councillor Artie Kelly. We would follow our purchasing policy as it is. So typically anything over 25,000, we need to make an attempt to get at least 3 quotes or go to RFP. But that doesn't mean that project specifically, the entire thing would have to go to tender. It depends on what that money would be spent on. But, you know, like purchasing a bus, for example, we would have to go to tender for that.
Okay. Mr. Logan? Oh, Mr. Burdett.
Thank you. And actually, I want to use this as a segue. We're also, as council may remember, members of Canoe Purchasing Group, and that's also a legal way for us to tender vehicles like a bus. So that may be another way to explore purchasing. And there's a report on Canoe specifically coming in a couple of weeks for council to look forward to.
Thank you. Mr. Logan.
Okay, and then the last slide's just the recommendation up there that's at the back of the report. As I mentioned, the council may want to provide directions specific to the year-round closure and adjust that amendment. And I have prepared a suggested amendment for council's consideration. However, it does still include the closure of the square itself year-round. So if you'd like to give staff a few minutes, we could prepare something.
Yeah, I think so. I think what you heard is at least, well, I'm speaking only for myself, at least create a robust consultation process around that so that we create improvements, because I think improvements are necessary, but that those improvements aren't poorly received by the community. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. I'm just curious if there's a way to kind of frame the recommendation so that it's not an either or situation with Station Square, but that we, approve in principle what's being presented, but that we reserve judgment on closure, that section of 6th, until we have more information.
Yeah, I'd put it back to Mr. Logan. I know you've worked an alternative, and maybe if you want to take a few minutes to have that conversation. And
sure, maybe I'll
bring
just
it
read
back.
what I've prepared and then council can maybe change that
Sure.
one.
I did want to ask though, before we get to that. So the going through the project outlines, like there's clearly opportunities where I hope where we can rely on the capacity of our partner organizations to potentially lead some projects and versus as we develop project charters, make it clear who's the lead, who is responsible for delivery, and I see you're nodding. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
within the city, I mean, there's not a ton of capacity for additional projects outside of our critical infrastructure projects and daily operations. So yes, we do heavily rely on community partners and members of this advisory working group. For example, the city wouldn't be arranging the mural install when there's a subject matter expert that's already delivered two very successful mural projects. As one example, our Trails Alliance, we have a good relationship with them. We have a service agreement for the dirt jumps. So we're going to leverage those relationships where we can to try and ease the impact on the staff work plans.
Yeah, and not only that, in my mind, to help them deliver a vision of what they see as the enhancements for our community as well. Like it's a bit of a trade-off or quid pro quo kind of, or mutual support, I guess is maybe a better way to put it, from my perspective. So with that, if you want to take a few minutes or no, you were just going to read us your suggestion.
Yeah, that's okay. Just as a starting point, the council endorsed the City of Fernie Resort Development Strategy, including an amendment to the Station Square Enhancement Project to avoid the closure of 6th Avenue and to focus improvements within the boundary of the square itself, excluding the roadway.
Councilor McKissick.
Now I presume that the excluding the roadway comes from, there's little point in doing that if it's not a permanent closure, because it'll just get damaged by commercial vehicles driving over it and all that sort of thing. But I guess the larger question I have is, of the proposed changes to Station Square, which of them are there any other than the road that are fully dependent on a permanent closure, as in they would not be applicable if it was a seasonal closure, for example, as opposed to permanent? I'm thinking of things like potential seating areas, those types of things.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of flexibility to add seating areas around the perimeter that won't impact parking. However, if we were looking to hardscape it differently, how nice would it look if we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on brick, for example, and then put line paint for parking stalls inside Station Square? So there's considerations like that that in my mind don't make a ton of sense if we're going to enhance that space and make it more welcoming for community events and staging downtown. In my personal opinion, I don't think it can serve both as a parking lot and an event space. The roadway, there's an argument for that it should be kept and that the parking along the side of the road is valuable. Also, since the recent conversation or the earlier conversations about Station Square in general, the engineering team has also improved parking hugely on First Ave with the angle parking and added a number of stalls. So at least replacing what we might be losing from Station Square.
Yeah.
But I worry about it being that prescriptive, Mr. Logan, because I feel like, for example, if between the alley and First Avenue, there's an opportunity to improve that space with pavers, for example, that there are streets the world over that have nice pavers underfoot. And one of the values of pavers, of course, is when you're replacing infrastructure beneath them, you can take them up and put them back. So I'm not sure I want to be that prescriptive. I think we want to look at it as well, personally, I want to look at it holistically, essentially, incorporating the art station with Station Square in a sort of creating a vision of what that could look like as a seasonal animated space. So I don't know what that does to your recommendation, but I wouldn't want to be that prescriptive. Councillor Audie Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. For me, it isn't just the closure, it's broader public engagement with community members, chamber members, tourism members about what improvements we would like to see, as well as if we don't close it versus do we close it. Like, I think that just requires broader public engagement. So I wouldn't want to just dial it down to, oh, we're going to amend it to say we won't necessarily close it. I mean, we may discover that there's quite a large segment of the community that says, hey, close it. That would be awesome, right? I feel where you're coming from with the prescriptiveness of it.
Councillor Shoesmith.
Yeah, I mean, this is, we've heard quite a lot that some more engagement on this would have been nice. I understand the timeline was really tight. This is pretty comprehensive coming out of such a tight timeline. Back to something our director said a minute ago, the functionality as a parking lot or an event space. I mean, there's definitely a point there. If this is a thing that's trying to be both, it's going to be less good at either of them. At the moment, it's okay. And, I would think this is about driving tourism. The only way tourists get to Fernie, to my knowledge, is driving. And they park. And if we want them uptown, I think all of the parking that we do have is invaluable for now. We can change that quickly in the blink of an eye. It's one council decision away at any point. If there's a big hue and cry that we want to shut down the parking lot because nobody's there and we want a permanent event space, I think leaving it more towards what it's doing right now is probably healthier. And again, that can change at any time.
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, I don't think the two things are mutually exclusive. Like if it's designed in such a way that it has temporary animation opportunity and it can serve, as it does today, as a parking space and an active street. I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive. It just takes some thought and planning to pull that off. Councillor Ramirez.
Thanks, Your Worship. It's been a long day for me, in 16th hour of my work day, so I might be not very good at thinking through this. I just feel like this particular portion of downtown and year-round or not is a separate discussion in itself. I think an ideal resolution here for myself, again, would be one that covers everything else, but just this one. And we take this out and put the rest of the things for a vote and take this out altogether from the recommendation.
I'm not sure we can pull it completely from the RDS, given it's been submitted to the province, but With Mr. Logan.
Sorry, Your Worship. One last point. It's just that I'm a little bit fuzzy about the conversation. I think there's a lot of things involved here, many stakeholders, and I don't think we have covered them all. And for us to be making this decision, at 9 o'clock in the night is probably not the right way to approach this.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I quite like what Councillor Audia Kelly said about let's have this conversation, this broader conversation about what this could look like. Because there is clearly an appetite for broader community input, and sort of leave it in the package as a point to discuss with our community. Councillor Ramirez.
Sorry, Worship. The only thing is some of these things tend to live for a long time, right? Like this particular idea of year-round closure has been around since 2018. It just lives on year.
Oh, much longer than that. In fact,
probably, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Right. So if we leave this resolution with that ambiguity, I am pretty sure that we will be talking about this again next year and the year after with no resolution. But I just feel like around the table, there is pretty much good consensus on everything else other than this one. So my suggestion would be to take this out, put the rest for a vote, and then we can take the downtown part itself at a later time.
Mr. Logan?
Sorry, listening to council's discussion, I think it might help just to review what the detailed project works includes in the project overview.
Okay.
And again, this is a high level presentation of this project specifically. So the first thing, council approving through the RDS staff to closure Station Square to vehicle traffic year round. It's pretty clear that that's not the direction we're headed. Installation of permanent or modular shade structures at Station Square for heat mitigation, hardscape surface for events, enhancement of public seating and rest areas for tourists and event attendees, purchasing of Station Square event support equipment, seating, signage, barricades, educational signage and public information about respectful space usage, collaboration with local businesses, the Fernie Chamber of Commerce and Tourism Fernie and the Fernie and District Arts Council to manage traffic and parking concerns in downtown related to Station Square and consider future planning of vendor and tent permitting framework, engagement with artists and cultural organizations to animate the Station Square space, YQT, FDAC, and FDHS. So I'm hearing the concerns, but my feeling is that through the process of the detailed project works, our community, our advisory group members, myself, are all not going to make a poor decision on behalf of the citizens. And through that, using the communications engagement framework and all that, I feel like we will hear the feedback and won't make a decision without community support.
Mm-hmm. Councillor McIsaac.
Thank you, Worship. I'm going to say I appreciate you reading that out, Director Logan, because there is very little in there that is of concern with the exception of the permanent closure.
Right.
And I'd also like to point out that while there have been a couple decades of public communication about that space in a wide variety of times, the current situation is not arriving out of the blue. It is the evolution of long-standing ideas for a long time. If we're as we do public engagement, if we get changes of direction, that's fine. But this is actually a continuation of what those groups and downtown businesses and the Arts Council and various people have already talked about. And there's very little, most of it in there is very benign. It just enhancement of that space. And I think I'm hearing around the table that none of us are really excited about permanent closure there. And as Councillor Audie Kelly says, perhaps the community will come back and say that's actually what they do want. Yeah. But aside from that, there's very little in there that I would be concerned about. So I would prefer not to pull it out and move forward with it.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, that I have my hand up just to point out those exact details. Like there's nothing in the detailed project works that is prescriptive, apart from the recommendation to close Station Square, which we've beat around the bush a few times and don't need to go there again. So, like Councillor McCarthy said, I think we can I'm comfortable passing this as a complete package, and I would like to see some continued engagement and a report come back with what that looks like, you know. Hopefully the group talks about what's permanent or modular sunshades might look like. You know, I don't want to be the design and beautification committee here, but I certainly am comfortable proving the budget as presented for these enhancements and letting the experts in these subject matter make some of those decisions.
So, Mr. Logan, is there a draft resolution that specifically removes the permanent closure or frames it as a point of conversation versus direction? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Ms. Rhodes, we'll take a 2-minute break. We'll just give Councillor Ramadas a moment to return to the table. We are. Welcome back. Turn to our corporate officer. Do you have a draft resolution for us?
Yes, Your Worship. That council direct an amendment to the City of Fernie's Resort Development Strategy 2025 to 2027, such that public consultation should determine any closures of Station Square, and with that amendment, approve the draft for submission to the Ministry of Tourism, Arts, Culture and Sport for review and funding under the Resort Municipality Initiative Program, and that council directs staff to implement the strategy in collaboration with Tourism Fernie and community stakeholders once approved by the Ministry of Tourism, Arts, Culture and Sport.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Point of order. Go ahead.
Put you the amendment, have to have the motion on the table first and then move on. Sorry. Thank you. In order to make the amendment, I think we have to make the motion first and then make a motion for the amendment and then pass the amended motion.
Mr. Borowski, we didn't have a motion on the table.
We didn't, so I'm wondering.
Yeah.
You are amending a plan, not a motion. So
Okay.
you're directing the amendment of a document, which you can do by resolution.
Okay. Thank you. So, so moved, and Councillor Nixon second. All those in favor? And those opposed? Councillor Ramadas, Councillor Shoesmith, Councillor Audia Kelly. It passes. Thank you. Item 14, correspondence. One of the first item, 14.1, was brought to us at not just in our correspondence, but we had some people speak to it at the public participation period. And I am, of course, supportive of the Fernie Child Care Society moving into that available space. I wonder, do we have a draft resolution that would support that? Just checking. Councillor McIsaac.
Just while we're waiting, Your Worship, I'm try as I might, I can't think of any reason why we would not want to have someone take over space that's being vacated. But it makes me curious is like, do we actually have to pass that, or is it just simply with staff an alteration of their existing agreement?
Fair comment. Mr. Borowski.
That would have to come to council. You'd be disposing of your interest in a property and improvements on the property. So ultimately you have to authorize its execution. The reason we're really looking for this is the space is now being vacated. The Max Turk Community Center is turning into ostensibly a child care and education center. If council so wishes to continue that, you can. I'd like you to know about the cost and implications of adding fixtures like washrooms and sinks into a room where that's not in a long-term plan of any sort, but I don't think any of that's a deal breaker. I just, I'm looking for direction from council specifically because you're going to have to authorize and execute that document. And your corporate officer does have a draft resolution. In my research looking through our master plans, I mean, the OCP is pretty darn clear. There are two sections specific to, or there are two sentences specific to childcare that speak directly to the, shared use of public buildings and the viability of existing childcare facilities. And so fully utilizing that space for childcare or something else brings in revenue to manage its viability. Yeah.
Corporate officer.
So the proposed recommendation is that council directs staff to develop an amendment to the Fernie Child Care Society lease to expand into the space being vacated, and that it, in the consideration of additional fixtures, be brought back for consideration.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Shoesmith. Any further discussion? Councillor Shoesmith.
It's almost like it's a natural fit for a school type setting.
Is it? Yeah. Councillor Ramadas.
I am in support in spirit, Your Worship, but what I don't know is, are there risks? Like, I don't know if we are like tunnel vision here. Like, that's, I don't know what I don't know here.
Yeah.
I don't know what actions to seek here, but I am also like, are there other competing organizations that come to us to use that space? Like,
I don't believe so. And I think that to Mr. Boranowski's comments, it feels like a natural extension. They need more space. The space is vacated. It feels fairly low risk in terms of allowing them to take on that additional footprint. Mr. Boranowski?
I mean, if council so wished, they could invest in developing those rooms for public rental, for drop-in use or birthday parties or other activities. Public space is always at a premium, but specifically in your strategic plan, you know, childcare and livable community, and that is by and large a childcare focused facility, and it's not expanding the activity. It's one operator moving into space vacated by another operator. There are always risks. If council wanted a full analysis, it would be worthwhile having that resolution come to the table if that full analysis or looking at alternatives was of interest rather than advancing this specific request at this time, or you saw more value in that.
Councillor Kelly?
Sorry, Your Worship. It's been a long work day for me as well. Can you just clarify again, CAO? So this would actually be an amendment to the lease that would have to come back to us because council has to approve it because of the disposition of property piece?
Yeah.
So anytime the public is giving up their interest or some of their interest in a property or improvements on a property, that has to be executed by council. So if you're to lease lands and though that lease is changing, the amendment needs to come back to council to change the nature of that.
Does that help, Councillor Ramanus?
yes, Your Worship. Yeah, thank you.
So we have a mover and a second. Oh, sorry, Councillor McCausey.
That's good. I think this will be very brief, Your Worship. Do we have we ever had or have we ever considered having a waiting list for groups looking for public spaces like that? Has that happened? I'm going to presume we don't have one now because I presume that would have been brought up, but.
We don't maintain a list of people looking for public space for long-term leases. There's interest in leasing space from the city of Fernie. You know, most notably leasing or procuring, most notably the Conseil Scolaire Francophone. However, the expansion contemplated in their current lease under negotiation is taking a back seat as they look at funding constraints. So, yeah, it depends on if council views this as the right opportunity or some other path forward.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. Item 14.2, the invite to meet with Premier and Cabinet at UBCM. I understand that is coming back to council at next committee of the whole as a report. So we'll, any other comments on correspondence? I would just comment on the letter from Minister Kalin about it. At no point does it mention any challenges with infrastructure in the communities. Like it talks about some communities' reluctance, but it doesn't in any way sort of talk about aging infrastructure and some of the challenges that presents. And I thought that was a bit of an oversight. Councillor Artie Kelly.
Your Worship, not to be cheeky here, but the province didn't really engage in robust community engagement on that whole piece.
Fair. Councillor Shoesmith.
Yeah, I felt a little thrown under the bus with that. It seemed a little scolding to me, but
it was very scolding.
Yeah, I would just like to note that, you know, this has been rolled out pretty well everywhere. The uptake is low to moderate. And, you know, that's just what people want. So,
yeah. Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
As a follow-up to a resolution at UBCM last year and in response to this letter, is there any value in us as a councillor, as a community responding to the letter and just really pointing out that if you as a province expect more uptake in this program, as you alluded to, we need support with the infrastructure. The roadblock, if you will, are the roads and sewers.
Yeah, I'd be happy to pen that letter and bring it back for council's consideration. Councilor Eddie Kelly.
I'd like to support Councillor Hamilton in saying that. And I also, just for people who may be still listening, our staff did a very good job on that project. They had a tight timeline, they had a lot to contend with, and they did an excellent job. So I think they served our citizens well with the parameters they were given.
I don't think we need a resolution or me to pen a response, do we?
If it's on behalf of the city of Fernie, it would just be ideal in keeping with practice to have a resolution such that council provide through the mayor a letter of response citing infrastructure support needs.
Moved by Councilor Ramirez, seconded by Councilor Hamilton. Any further discussion? Councilor Ramirez?
I'd like to use what Councillor Hamilton said as the subject line, roadblock. This is roads and sewers. That would be great way to start the letter.
All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. And conscious of time, I appreciate everybody's patience this evening. I need to jump back to item 4.1 because in my haste to get all our folks an opportunity to speak, I missed, I'll leave a mover and a seconder that the minutes of the May 27th, 2025 regular meeting be adopted. Moved by Councilor McIsaac, seconded by Councilor Hamilton. Any discussion? All those in favor? Nice hesitation there, Councilor Nixon. Reports from council. I'll start with Councilor Shoesmith.
Oh, great stuff. Big stuff. Actually, it's nice. I can talk about all this stuff now, seeing as I'm no longer the Lions Club president. Yeah, I've been rolling away, getting derby stuff going. That's going to be a great year this year. The local police are going to be involved. It's going to be a great time. And also working away at the Canada Day stuff. So yeah, just a reminder that all the charities and a bunch of people from town are coming together, and the Elks and Rotary 3300 and of course the Lions are all really putting in some elbow grease to it. I think it's going to be fun, and I look forward to seeing everybody out there.
Thank you. Councilor Nixon.
Thank you, Worship. First off, I want to congratulate our youth councillor, Sophia Becker, who's up there on the top in the little screen there, not only for her role in Beetlejuice, but also being the valedictorian for Fernie Secondary this year. So
congratulations.
Well done, Sophia. Way to go. Next, I want to stick on the school theme. I was invited by Kristen Lewis at the Kootenai Discovery School, which is in one of the portables at Isabella Dickin, to listen to a presentation on the garbage audit that they completed last year. Rest of council was invited. I happened to just have that day off. Anyways, so lots of cigarette butts surrounding businesses in the downtown. I did invite them to come to the committee of the whole meeting where it could be presented to the rest of the council. They identified the problem, they gave the solution. It was great. And we talked about public education, et cetera, and they said they might come this fall or maybe not. So I gave them the appear as a delegation, but I hope to see them because it was great. It was really good. And then lastly, or another thing, speaking of schools, I just wanted to update council on the Panthers Pantry and the path that has gone so far. We had Miss Green and Miss Jeffrey appear and put a request for the resident directed grants from the Columbia Basin Trust. We gave them almost $19,000 from the resident directed Columbia Basin Trust grant. And I think everyone here at this table was really quite moved that, we have 5% of the school population going home to an empty fridge. Hence the call to action from this group. And as of today, they are the Fernie Food Security Society, and they have a working bank account, which is great. Lots of really motivated people in this group who are racing to communicate with the youth in need and do some fundraising. An amazing group of educators, parents, coaches, people who really care and are taking action right now. So kudos to them, and I look forward to seeing what happens with that. So that's about it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Otter Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship, but I'm going to apologize in advance for being a little bit lengthy here. Continuing on in the vein that Councillor Nixon brought up, I recently attended the 100 Women Who Care event, which is held twice annually, and 100 women from our area each contribute $100 to support 2 meaningful local causes. One of this year's recipients was the newly formed Fernie Food Security Society, and they are seeking volunteers to join their efforts every second Thursday morning throughout the summer. And if you're able to help, please reach out. Your time could make a real difference. The other recipient was Zip Shops, which young Amy Atella, who's an amazing 18-year-old young lady from the community, made a pitch about, and it's also an extremely worthy cause. And if everyone will indulge me, I would really like to share some serious concerns that are deeply affecting myself and concerns that I believe resonate across our entire community. I've been watching with growing concern the increasing number of people in Fernie struggling to meet their most basic needs. These are uncertain times, and many are facing fear, frustration, and significant financial strain. And conversations with leaders in our local social programs confirm that it isn't just anecdotal, it's a growing reality. So I'd like to have us take a clear-eyed look at the situation on the ground. The Salvation Army now provides food hampers to an average of 186 distinct families every month, a vital lifeline. Our weekly food share program serves approximately 350 individuals regularly, from young children to seniors. That's weekly. These numbers reflect a consistent and urgent need. We're seeing people living in their vehicles. Some are experiencing homelessness, and perhaps most distressing is that 5% of children in our public schools are food insecure, meaning some children in Fernie are going hungry. Meanwhile, many seniors living on fixed incomes are dealing with food insecurity, isolation, and the looming risk of losing their homes. Local housing societies are stretched, facing wait lists, and that reflect just how hard it is for many to secure stable housing. All of this is unfolding as our community contends with substantial increases in local taxes. As of 2024, the cumulative tax increase had reached 27.4%. This year, the average Fernie household faces a tax bill of $5,348.62, of which $2,758.29 is the municipal portion, and the rest is distributed among services including police, schools, RDEK, hospitals, and other public agencies. According to the BC Assessment website, the average assessed home value in Fernie is now $856,000 based on July 2024 market values. For those with mortgages on such properties, minimum monthly payments alone can exceed $4,300, and that excludes property taxes, insurance, utilities, and basic living expenses such as food, transportation, and clothing. Looking forward, we face more pressing needs. A referendum is on the horizon to approve the construction of a new fire hall. At the same time, we're dealing with critical investments needed for our sewer and water systems and a failing slope that poses a significant risk. Without substantial grant funding, these essential projects will require considerable borrowing. The broader context of living here, recent data shows that a single person residing in Fernie needs approximately $3,700 to $4,000 a month to cover their living expenses. And yet, according to Statistics Canada, the median combined household income in Fernie is $107,000, and the average individual income is around $41,800, or roughly $20 an hour. Seniors relying solely on government pensions typically receive about $1,800 a month. These figures lay bare the financial strain being felt by many of our residents. So when we deliberate on our municipal budget and how to allocate public funds, I urge us to stay grounded in these realities. Residents are making significant sacrifices, and it's essential that local government demonstrates fiscal prudence and shares in that sacrifice. Our city isn't just a balance sheet. It's a living, breathing community of people. As elected officials, our duty is to ensure that every decision we make reflects a commitment to improving the quality of life for all. To preserve Fernie's unique identity, we must safeguard our socioeconomic diversity. That means ensuring people of all ages and income levels can live, work, and thrive here. We have to protect the character and authenticity that our blue-collar founders built values that still draw visitors from around the world. If we lose that, if we let go of our sense of community and shared responsibility, we're going to lose a part of what makes us truly special here in Fernie. And as a knitter, I know that dropping just one stitch can unravel an entire piece of work. And let's not allow our community to unravel. Several months ago, I spoke about what I see as a gap in our strategic planning. We can't solve our infrastructure deficit or adequately fund our reserves through tax increases alone, and no realistic hike in property taxes will solve those challenges. We need to think differently. A comprehensive, up-to-date inventory of city-owned land with clear evaluations of not just monetary value, but the highest and best use of these properties is urgently needed. These assets could unlock significant opportunities for housing, economic development, and community services. With the official community plan under review and council revisiting its strategic priorities, it couldn't be more timely opportunity to act. If we must consider alternative revenue streams and creative economic development opportunities and strategies that will allow Fernie to grow out of our challenges rather than burdening residents with ever-increasing taxes. And I'd like to invite every resident to engage. Make your voice heard. Write to us at mycouncil@fernie.ca. Attend our budget open houses, town halls, and council cafes. Your input matters and shapes the future of Fernie. So I'd like to see us build a future that holds space for everyone. And if you'll just indulge me a little more, I have some notes about the last tourism meeting that I attended on May 29th. We talked about STR and business license fees. I gave a little bit of update to the board on water and sewer. I talked about the importance of understanding the inventory and city assets, which tourism concurred. Tourism spoke about the importance of economic development to the future of the community. We are a tourism destination town and have been for over 100 years. They also are fully prepared to continued growth and effort in destination management and develop projects to support that economic development. And Tourism Fernie would also be happy to support all efforts on the upcoming OCP process and address council in the fall on the diversity of their projects underway and to support any information needed for upcoming strategy sessions. Just a little bit of update on tourism in the community. Winter was a really strong season with a solid snow year with occupancy up 10% over last winter. Good news. On the little sort of bad news, spring was a little soft, down due to a reduction in the expected corporate travel and business given what's happening down south and its impact on the overall economy and spending. But things are looking up, and May and June have proven more positive than April was so far. Tourism Fernie is also hosting a ribbon cutting event at the Morrissey Boat Launch this Thursday at 11. 3 years and 200,000 in grant funds helped to install a proper boat launch and improve the parking area, install signs and kiosks. And anyone's welcome to attend. And thanks to them for the hard work on that project. Tourism Fernie also has a wildfire page that's been activated and will provide us localized information and photos of the sky to help travelers planning their trip to know if anything is actually being impacted here in Fernie versus what they hear about wildfires across Canada. And lastly, Tourism Fernie is developing a new website this year with an expected launch in time for winter season. Thank you very much, everyone, for letting me go on.
Councillor McIsaac.
Thank you, Worship. It won't be too long. I first wanted to say I couldn't agree more than with what Councillor Adi Kelly just said. It's absolutely the case, and this is not a Fernie problem or a BC problem, not even a Canada problem from traveling abroad, I hear it. Property taxes are unable to keep up with the infrastructure deficit created by decades of paucity of investment. That is just a cold, harsh reality. And so engaging with other levels of government, like the province in Canada, in order to find additional ways to fund those things is a necessity. And to that end, just recently, we just had our first new board meeting of the Association of Kootenay Boundary Local Government, which I attended. We had a lot of discussion about how valuable our infrastructure education day was for so many elected officials that were there, about what the challenges are and the opportunities are. And looking at continuing that again for the next AKBLG convention and some other, probably a different topic, but as well, looking at continuing forward the resolutions to bring the concerns that municipalities have to the province via UVCM and so on, which will hopefully many of us will be able to attend in September. So That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ramanathan.
Thanks, Your Worship. Mine is a little different from all these conversations. I had the opportunity to attend the cadets parade on your behalf there. It was well attended, excellent work from all the cadets and the parents. It was really good, a lot of fun. Also had the opportunity to go on the hike for hospice. Again, was super good turnout, and just like the experience we had with the Ready grant, again, like I got a good understanding of how that organization runs, and the countless volunteer hours that people put in there. Really good. I was just doing a big run on that day, so it was like at the very end of my 40-kilometer run, and I had to like keep up with all these seniors who were like really going at a very high fast pace there. It was hard for me. Another last one, Your Worship, is I had also an opportunity to attend a speak-off contest between the Grasmere Secondary School and the Fernie Academy. So it was, I think it is the first of its kind, wherein the academy is bringing in students from rural communities, and kids have the speak-off contests. It was fascinating to watch kids from rural background speak off against kids in city background, and the whole diversity of life experiences for these 8, 10, 12-year-old kids was just super fascinating. I urge my fellow councillors to attend this whenever it's on next year.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Your Worship. Riffing a little bit off of what Councillor McIsaac said, I too was at the first board meeting for AKBLG. And one of the big topics was advocacy and how as an organization we were going to advocate for communities, to the province, to UBCM, based on the resolutions that were passed at AKBLG. Funding infrastructure is up there. The other item that I had jotted down here, I was actually away on holidays for about 10 days. And while I was away, I had the opportunity to go up to Northern Saskatchewan to do fishing. And when we left, there was a couple forest fires in the area, but nothing of major concern. But by the time we left, La Ronge had been evacuated. Sucker River, had seen significant damage. All these routes are on the sole road in and out of this area. Not much different from here in the Elk Valley, where you've got one ingress and one exit. So, this coming into fire season is a good reminder to the community to make sure you've got your go bag packed with all your important documents. Make sure you've got an evacuation plan for your family if you're separated when an evacuation order comes in, and to remember that these things can change like 24 hours, 48 hours. So that was how I will leave this.
Thank you, Councillor. Youth Councillor Becker.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
We can.
Okay, I don't really have much to report. I have been away for a while. I've been in Beetlejuice, and before that I was sick, and now I have, I think, a little bit of food poisoning. Not contagious, of course, but figured I might as well stay home for the night. Thank you, Mr. Nixon, for always showing me out. I really appreciate it. And like Councillor Hamilton said, please be aware of fire season. It's super serious. I know a lot of people saw the smoke coming in on whatever day it was this past week. It was kind of smoky in town. So yeah, just having your go bags ready for sure. Other than that, I've been getting ready for grad. Lots of planning. I'm one of the heads of our grads, so I'm planning most of the banquet and commencement things. And then with the Fernie Heritage Library, we're just getting ready for our book sale fundraiser on July 4th and 5th. So mark down your calendars and make sure you pop by the library then to come and support us.
Thank you, Youth Councillor. I look forward to hearing your valedictory speech when I'm there for your graduation. For me, I had the good fortune to attend the Federation of Canadian Municipalities in Ottawa, FCM. And what's resonating with me based on this conversation around the table is that the Prime Minister presented and he was asked about the new fiscal framework, which the previous Prime Minister was had moved that along in terms of he was very supportive of creating a new fiscal framework. And I will say that Prime Minister Carney, my sense of it was he has other priorities to work on at this juncture. And he was quite flat at the end. But it does highlight for me this notion that working with at least our provincial government at this juncture to make sure that they are aware, for example, in Minister Kalin's letter, that we have challenges that they potentially haven't even identified in terms of how we can improve things in our community. And one other thing I want to say was the value of a lot of those events, of course, is the breakfast conversations. And I had a conversation with a counselor from Mount Pearl, Newfoundland, who at one point they were the country's worst offender for water usage, largely because they have aging infrastructure and they had leaky pipes, and they employed a technology that I'm still awaiting feedback from him. He's going to send me some information that in 6 years they had moved off the charts, as it were, in terms of their water usage. So looking forward to hearing back from them as to what exactly it was they did, but always very valuable, those events. I also attended the Elk River Alliance, Living Lakes Canada, and the Yakitat Nucleate First Nation hosted a Without Water Symposium last Thursday at Yakitat Nucleate, and it was an excellent event. And Grand Chief Stuart Phillip was there, and he pointed out that despite the name of the symposium, Without Water, nobody really addressed that. And he said that is something we really need to consider, because we'd done a field trip earlier in the day and visited with the acting CAO, Jason Gravel from Yakitat Nucleate, a lake called Shotnana Lake, that the water level has dropped. Well, it actually had completely dried up, but it had dropped about 30 feet. And they're working very hard to reestablish it, but they're not sure they're going to be able to do that. And it was quite an eye-opening experience. Yeah, and a happier note, I entertained Mrs. Murray's grade 2 class from Isabel Dicken at City Hall, and that is always a lot of fun. And I had a great couple of meetings with the new campus manager, Tim Shoas, here at College of the Rockies, and Michael Crow, the new president of College of the Rockies in Cranbrook, about opportunities for collaboration between ourselves as local governments and that institution. So those were very good. And I wanted to say to Councillor Nixon that to your point about the food insecurity program, I've received a lot of positive feedback from parents and teachers for the support that we've given them, and that it's really kicked that, created some momentum for them. So yeah, I was grateful they came and asked and opened our eyes to that fact. So with that, unless there's anything else, we will adjourn the meeting at 9:40 p.m. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for coming.